Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Christina Ann and Thompson Harris. Christina Ann Thompson, 30, and Jason Thomas Harris, 40, had been married since 2003 after dating for about 5 years. They had their first child in 2009, and their lives changed significantly. Despite the challenges of everyday life, they seemed happy with their new life as parents. Christina took care of their child and the household, while Jason worked at a plastics factory. As their child grew up, Christina had the opportunity to contribute to the family budget by getting a job. However, in May 2014, she had to take maternity leave as she was expecting her second child. On September 29, 2014, Jason left for work and exchanged a few words with Christina, who was not feeling well due to a cold. Despite her poor health, she assured Jason that she was okay. A few hours later, Jason called his wife to check on her, but she didn't answer the phone. This sparked worry in Jason, as he couldn't understand why Christina wasn't answering his calls. Jason couldn't reach Christina, so he asked a neighbor to check on her. He told the neighbor that Christina was sick and wasn't answering her phone. The neighbor went to the house, knocked on the door, and called out to Christina, but no one answered. Since the door was unlocked, the neighbor went inside and found Christina lying on the bed. She couldn't wake Christina up, so she called 911 and then got a neighbor who was a registered nurse to help. The nurse checked Christina's pulse and confirmed that she had passed away. On September 29, 2014, 4 months after giving birth to her second child, Christina was found dead in her house. When the police arrived, Jason was already there. He told them that Christina was sick and he had left her alone in the morning. 2 days later, the medical examiner determined that Christina's death was caused by an overdose of a prohibited substance. This news shocked her family and friends. Christina, a mother of 2 young children, was found dead, and many people who knew her were shocked. They claimed she had never used illegal substances. Her mother, Kathy May, reported to the police that Christina was fine when she saw her the day before her death, contradicting her husband Jason's statement that Christina was struggling with a cold. Kathy May also revealed that Christina described her marriage to Jason as complicated. Jason was unhappy in the marriage, but didn't want a divorce because he didn't want to pay child support or lose custody of their children. The neighbors who discovered Christina's body shared some information with the police. Apparently, Jason told them that on the evening before Christina's death, he made her cereal with milk, and while eating, she lost consciousness and dropped the plate. The police understood that it was hard for Christina's loved ones to accept that someone they knew well might have a hidden dark side. However, as the investigation progressed, the police began to doubt that Christina had used any illegal substances. Christina's family refused to give up, and they didn't believe the story. Christina's family, particularly her mother and sisters, urged the police to test her breast milk for evidence. Initially, the police delayed this request for 48 hours, but the family's persistence eventually led them to comply. This marked the first time in Michigan's history that breast milk was used as evidence in a case. Tests conducted at her workplace and the hospital where she gave birth to her second child came back negative for prohibited substances. At the time of her death, her second child was just 4 months old, and Christina was still breastfeeding both children. According to her husband, Harris, and her mother, Christina was meticulous about what she consumed because she was breastfeeding and wanted to ensure her baby's health and safety. Christina had been pumping and storing her breast milk in a freezer, with some of the frozen milk stored at her mother's house. Investigators tested 3 bags of breast milk for prohibited substances, using the dates on the bags to determine which ones were frozen before her death. The results showed no traces of banned substances in any of the milk samples. This finding suggested that Christina had not taken the substance that caused her death. Only one person, Jason's sister, had claimed that Christina had used banned substances. This statement led investigators to take a closer look at Jason and consider the possibility that Christina's death was intentional. The investigation was slow, and it's unclear how it would have progressed without the active involvement of Christina's family. Her mother, Kathy May, kept in close contact with the Davidson police, reminding them about her daughter's case. In August 2016, almost 2 years after Christina's death, Kathy May was able to get the Davidson police to turn the case over to the Michigan State Police. With new investigators on the case, the story began to unfold, revealing more information about Jason Harris's behavior before and after his wife's death. Harris was involved in multiple extramarital affairs, and Christina was aware of these infidelities. She had confided in family members and co-workers about the situation, including the fact that Harris was texting another woman while she was in the hospital giving birth to their youngest child. Christina had expressed concerns about her safety, telling a co-worker that if she died, Harris would be the one responsible. When asked if she was serious, she confirmed that she was. Harris had made public statements that questioned the paternity of their second child and had complained about Christina's behavior after giving birth, saying she was depressed and refusing to work. He also complained about her nagging him. A co-worker of Harris's reported that he had made disturbing comments about Christina, including expressing a desire for her death. This co-worker described the relationship between Harris and Christina as toxic, citing frequent arguments between them. The most alarming aspect of this case is that Harris was open about his desire to get rid of Christina, and he even took steps to harm her. Unfortunately, his words and actions were not taken seriously until it was too late. Harris had attempted to poison Christina on at least 2 occasions by mixing substances into her drinks. Fortunately, Christina was able to detect the unusual taste and avoided drinking the beverages. Harris asked a co-worker for a substance that would not affect the taste or smell of food and drinks, explaining that he wanted to poison Christina so she wouldn't feel anything. When he told another co-worker that Christina didn't drink the water with the substance because it tasted funny, the co-worker refused to give him more pills. A co-worker testified that Harris told him he wanted to stop Christina from nagging him, but the co-worker thought he was joking. Harris also told a co-worker that he had hired someone to kill Christina, but the person was arrested before they could carry out the task. Harris then asked the co-worker to kill Christina in exchange for $10,000, which would be paid from a $100,000 life insurance policy Christina had through her employer. The co-worker refused the offer, believing that Harris was just venting his emotions and that the offer to kill Christina was a joke. He remembered the conversation as Harris saying something like, "I'm tired of her. I'm going to get rid of her." Back to the case, the 911 operator asked the neighbor who found Christina's body if there were any needles at the scene, but the neighbor did not see any. The neighbor, a registered nurse, testified that Christina's body was cold and stiff, had no pulse, and had a white foamy substance coming from her mouth. The neighbor did not attempt to resuscitate Christina because she was already dead. The paramedics who responded to the scene confirmed that Christina was dead. Harris told his supervisor that he had asked a neighbor to check on Christina and that he had to go home because she was unresponsive. However, witnesses reported that Harris did not appear concerned or in a hurry when he arrived at the house. Harris entered the house without speaking to the neighbor he had asked to check on Christina. Later that morning, Harris contacted Christina's supervisor at work and informed her of Christina's death. He also inquired about collecting the $100,000 life insurance policy benefit that Christina had through her job. One of the women Harris was in a relationship with told investigators that Harris contacted her on the day of Christina's death and said that his wife had died from taking too much of a banned substance. This suggests that Harris knew the cause of Christina's death before the medical examiner's report was released. Harris shared some details about the night before Christina's death, including her restless sleep, frequent coughing, and unusual comment about the chemical taste of her water. He later visited her workplace to inquire about life insurance proceeds, collecting a $20,000 death benefit and raising suspicions with his actions. A mistress also moved in with him and his children, either before or after her funeral. The mistress stated that Jason Harris's adult children from a previous marriage moved into the house just days after Christina's death. Police also found that Jason Harris had bought an airline ticket to Rhode Island 9 days after Christina's death to visit a woman he had exchanged over 5,800 texts with. The county medical examiner, Dr. Brian Hunter, submitted post-mortem blood and urine samples for testing. Although the test results were consistent with a lethal dose of the substance, there was no evidence of how the substance was administered, as there were no injection marks on her body and no powder residues or rolling paper were found near the scene of her death. Michigan State Police took over the investigation in 2016. Dr. Hunter changed the manner of death from accidental to homicide after a wrongful death action. Jason Harris was charged with first-degree murder and others. His bail was denied. Harris pleaded not guilty and will contest the charges. The prosecution eliminated the possibility of injection as the cause of death because there were no injection marks or a needle found at the scene. Dr. Judge testified that it was unlikely the substance was inhaled through the nose because there was no evidence of a rolled dollar bill or paper used for snorting. When given the opportunity to speak, Jason Harris did not apologize or express remorse. Instead, he claimed he was innocent. The jury did not believe his claims and found him guilty of the charges against him. On November 17, 2021, the jury delivered a guilty verdict for 47-year-old Harris. 3 weeks later, the court sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jaden Parkinson. Jaden Parkinson was born on September 26, 1996, in Folkestone, UK, as the youngest of 3 siblings in a troubled family. Her parents' relationship was marked by discord. Jaden's mother, Samantha, recounts that her children were exposed to unsettling experiences. When Jaden was just 7 years old, her parents divorced, and she initially lived with her father. Despite this, she maintained a close bond with her mother, with whom she would talk every night over the phone. As Jaden entered her teenage years, her lifestyle became increasingly turbulent. According to Samantha, Jaden's father gave her excessive freedom, which led to her involvement with a crowd that encouraged smoking and alcohol consumption. Jaden would periodically live with her father and then with her mother. At the age of 13, she ran away from home, seeking refuge with her mother and expressing a desire to live with her. Ultimately, the family court ruled in favor of Jaden's wish, allowing her to stay with her mother. Jaden had a difficult time at school, often clashing with teachers and resenting attempts to control her behavior. In her personal life, she was in a romantic relationship with Ben Blakely, whom she met at 14. Despite their significant age difference, Ben was 20, Jaden's mother was unable to intervene. Initially, Jaden and Ben's relationship was loving and romantic, but it gradually became strained and controlling. Ben exerted significant influence over Jaden's life, dictating her appearance, including what clothes she wore and whether she wore makeup. He also isolated her from her family and friends, causing Jaden to move out of her mother's house and into a hostel for women escaping domestic violence. Ben exerted total control over Jaden's life, despite being banned from her hostel. They frequently argued, and the hostel staff were even warned about Ben's aggressive behavior towards her. Jaden was trapped, needing his permission to do anything. Ben took away her phone, convincing her that she only needed him and his love. Ben dictated who Jaden could talk to, forbidding her from interacting with men. He monitored her social media, and she eventually stopped attending school. His grip on her life was so tight that he even restricted her from leaving her room to use the toilet. Jayden's daily phone calls with her mother dwindled to just 1 or 2 conversations per month. Jayden's mother, Samantha, pleaded with her to return home and end the toxic relationship, but Jayden refused. Ben's control over Jayden was both psychological and physical. She was often seen with bruises on her face. On November 30th, 2013, Jayden called her mother to reveal that she was pregnant. Jayden hoped that having a child would change Ben's attitude towards her and his lifestyle for the better. She thought the baby would bring them closer together and that Ben would go back to being the person she fell in love with. However, Ben did not live up to her expectations. Instead, he revealed his true nature once he had complete control over Jayden. He manipulated her into isolating herself from her friends and family, making her financially dependent on him. He even went so far as to restrict her movements, not allowing her to leave her room, even to use the toilet. Meanwhile, Ben was dating other girls behind her back, controlling them psychologically and physically as well. When Jayden's mother, Samantha, found out about her pregnancy, she asked Jayden to come back home, but Jayden refused, not wanting to cause her mother any more trouble. When Jayden told Ben about her pregnancy, he became angry and denied being the father of her child. Before she vanished, Jayden was being threatened by Ben, who claimed he would post intimate photos and videos of her on social media. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Jayden reported Ben to the authorities, fearing he would follow through on his threat. At the time, Ben possessed 30 explicit photos and 13 videos of Jayden, which she desperately wanted to keep private. On December 3rd, Jayden failed to return to her hostel, prompting staff to launch a search. Given their awareness of Jayden's personal issues, they contacted her mother, Samantha, by phone, but she was unable to provide any information about her daughter's whereabouts. A missing persons report was filed with the police just after midnight on December 4th, 2013. After learning about Jayden's tumultuous personal life, investigators reached out to Ben to see if he had any information about her disappearance. However, he was hostile and hung up on them multiple times, claiming he couldn't assist and had no idea where Jayden might be. Jayden had a troubled upbringing and frequently clashed with her family, even running away from home on several occasions. Given this history, her initial disappearance didn't raise immediate red flags during the investigation. On December 4th, police arrested Ben Blakely, but it wasn't related to Jayden's disappearance. Instead, Jayden had previously reported Ben to the police, fearing he would post intimate photos of her online. The investigators who spoke with Ben were unaware that he was also a person of interest in Jayden's disappearance case. After being arrested, Ben denied plans to share Jayden's photos online and was released on bail that same day. Samantha, Jayden's mother, took action by distributing flyers with her daughter's picture and using social media to raise awareness about her disappearance, hoping someone had information about her whereabouts. Meanwhile, the police reviewed surveillance footage to track Jayden's last known movements. They obtained CCTV footage from her hostel, which showed her leaving to meet Ben, but not returning. This was on December 3rd. Further investigation revealed that Jayden was next spotted at Oxford railway station, where CCTV footage captured her walking in with Ben. The footage didn't show anything suspicious. By tracing their journey, investigators discovered that Ben and Jayden took a train to Didcot, a town about 10 miles from Oxford. The last known location of Jayden was at the train station in Didcot, where footage showed her and Ben exiting the building. Jayden would typically reach out to her family within a day or two after running away from home to let them know she was safe. However, this time was different. Despite the passing days, Jayden failed to contact her family or friends, and her social media accounts remained inactive. The CCTV footage showing her boarding a train with Ben made him the prime suspect in her disappearance. The police were convinced that Ben knew Jayden's whereabouts and what had happened to her. The footage also revealed Ben returning to the train station alone, but Jayden was never seen alive again. On December 10, 2013, a week after her disappearance, the police arrested Ben Blakely. The investigators wanted to question Ben to determine what had happened to Jayden after they left the train station in Didcot together. At the time, the police considered two possibilities. Jayden might be hiding, or Ben could be holding her against her will. During the interrogation, Ben was very confident in his responses. He claimed to have no knowledge of his ex-girlfriend Jayden's whereabouts, stating that they had broken up and she had moved on to a new relationship. According to Ben, the police should focus their investigation on her new boyfriend. Ben showed a lack of concern for Jayden's safety, saying he didn't care what happened to her now that they were no longer together and he had a new girlfriend. He suggested that the police check her social media accounts to track her location and identify who she was interacting with. Despite Jayden still being missing, Ben was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and murder. The police then interviewed Jayden's friends to see if they had any information about her possible whereabouts. However, their investigations revealed that Jayden had become estranged from her friends after starting her relationship with Ben, and therefore, no one knew of a potential hideout. A crucial break in the search for Jayden came when a taxi driver from Didcot contacted investigators. He reported that on December 4th, around 1 a.m., he picked up a young man on a dirt road who was struggling with a large, heavy suitcase covered in mud. The passenger needed help lifting the bag into the taxi, which raised the driver's suspicions about its contents and whether he might have unknowingly witnessed a crime. Further investigation revealed that the passenger had called the taxi using Ben Blakely's mobile phone. When police questioned Ben about this new evidence, he refused to answer any more questions. Analysis of his phone's location records showed that Ben had been to several locations in Didcot, including an abandoned barn in the countryside, which became a key area of interest in the case. The team of investigators, comprising criminologists and dog handlers, visited the location where a taxi had picked up Ben that night to conduct an investigation. It was later discovered that Ben and Jayden had previously been to this area, as Jayden's mother resided in Didcot, which is located near the barn. The police discovered a bracelet similar to Jayden's near the barn. Trained service dogs reacted as if they'd found a body inside, but Jayden's body wasn't there. This led the police to suspect that a suitcase, possibly containing Jayden's body, was involved. The police asked the public to come forward if they'd seen a man carrying a large suitcase in the Didcot area. Meanwhile, they conducted door-to-door interviews with nearby residents. Surveillance footage from the train station showed that Ben and Jayden didn't have a suitcase with them. Investigators were determined to find out where Ben got the suitcase, but they also considered the possibility that the man seen with the suitcase by the taxi driver wasn't actually Ben. On December 14th, the police found a crucial lead in their investigation. Ben Blakely's grandmother, grandfather, and younger brother Jake lived near the abandoned barn where the mysterious events unfolded. When the police arrived at their doorstep, Ben's grandmother immediately asked, "Are you here about the suitcase?" The grandmother explained that Ben had borrowed a suitcase from her a few days prior, hurriedly emptying its contents on the floor without explanation. He returned the suitcase 2 days later, but it was dirty. Additionally, she reported that 2 shovels had gone missing and reappeared, covered in a thick layer of dirt. The presence of the dirt-covered shovels raised suspicions that Ben may not have acted alone. Moreover, Jake, Ben's 17-year-old brother, was revealed to be a friend of Jayden's, which hinted at a potential connection between they. Witnesses reported seeing Ben and Jake riding dirt bikes together around the time the police were searching for Jayden. The police arrested Jake Blakely on suspicion of being involved in the crime. They sent the suitcase Ben had returned to his grandmother's barn to a laboratory for analysis to see if it had any traces of Jayden's DNA. Based on the evidence, investigators developed a theory that Jayden was killed in an abandoned barn, then placed in a suitcase and taken to another location where she was buried. However, searching the vast fields surrounding Didcot made finding her body a daunting task. To aid in the investigation, the police used aerial photography to identify 10 areas where the soil surface had recently been disturbed. They checked several locations, but didn't find Jayden's body until they had searched all 10 areas of interest. A significant development occurred in the case when Jake Blakely began cooperating with the police. He directed them to investigate his uncle's grave at a local cemetery in Didcot, near the All Saints Church. Although the cemetery was one of 10 locations that had recently shown signs of surface disturbance, it was initially considered a low priority since such changes are not unusual in a cemetery setting. However, after receiving a note from Jake Blakely suggesting that Jayden's body might be buried in his uncle's grave, the police cordoned off the cemetery. This was a completely new and unprecedented tactic in hiding a victim's body, and it drew widespread media attention. Ben and Jake Blakely's uncle had been buried in 2006, and the forensic team set up a tent in the cemetery to conduct their investigation. After some time, they made the grim discovery. Jayden's body was found in the grave, naked, with no clothes or jewelry present. This was the first time in the country that a victim's body had been hidden in an existing grave. An examination by forensic experts revealed that Jayden was beaten before her death, with evidence of strangulation and finger marks on her neck. The official cause of death was asphyxia, as determined by the pathologist. While in prison awaiting trial, Ben Blakely had a change of heart after speaking with the prison chaplain. He wrote a letter, along with his lawyer, admitting responsibility for Jayden's death. Ben claimed that the crime was not planned, stating that he pushed Jayden during an argument, causing her to fall from a nearby bridge. He attempted to revive her but was unsuccessful. Initially, he buried her body in one location, but later moved it to his uncle's grave in the cemetery. However, the autopsy contradicted his story, showing blunt force injuries to her face and asphyxia as the cause of death, with no signs of a fall from a height. It meant Ben Blakely was dishonest to avoid responsibility for his actions. However, the truth came to light during the trial, which started on June 23, 2014, after Jayden's father had passed away due to heart problems. Blakely showed no remorse for taking the lives of Jayden and her unborn child. Instead, he behaved defiantly, shouting insults and displaying his indifference. Throughout the 4-week trial, it became clear that Blakely was a violent and controlling boyfriend. 3 of his ex-girlfriends testified that he had been abusive to them, taking their phones, hitting them, and choking them if they answered back, or if he suspected them of cheating. Blakely's short temper was on full display during the trial. He frequently outbursted in anger, using foul language in the courtroom and shouting at the prosecutor, Richard Leem. The judge repeatedly warned him about his behavior, but it was too much for Jayden's mother and other family members who were often forced to leave the courtroom in tears. Judge Patrick Eccles was shocked by Ben's behavior, so he sent him to the cells and continued the trial without him for a day. Although Jake Blakely is under 18, Judge Eccles allowed his name to be published because it was in the public's best interest. Jake has admitted to trying to disrupt the legal process, but claimed he thought he was burying weapons or dead animals at the time. Ben promised his sibling Jake an Xbox and £100 to commit the crime. CCTV footage showed Ben and Jayden taking a train to Didcot, then Jake returning alone, hiding his face. The prosecutor said it was a planned crime, with Jake luring Jayden to a secluded spot to kill him. Blakely took Jayden to an abandoned barn in another town after finding out she was pregnant, likely because he wanted to control her and didn't want to become a father. Jayden wanted to start a new life, but Blakely wouldn't let her go. Jayden's mother, Samantha, supported creating a domestic violence registry in an interview with Sky News. She recalled how Blakely manipulated and controlled Jayden, getting money from her, and said she thought she was his target, not Jayden. The jury deliberated for 20 hours before reaching a verdict. Ben Blakely was guilty of intentionally killing Jayden Parkinson. The judge emphasized that Jake Blakely's abusive behavior towards Jayden involved physical and emotional mistreatment during their relationship. Blakely controlled every aspect of Jayden's daily life, taking away her phone to isolate her from others. When she was living at a hostel, he forced her to stay in her room, even restricting her access to the bathroom. The judge pointed out that Jayden was deeply emotionally attached to Blakely, making it challenging for her to break free from the toxic relationship. Finally, in November last year, Jayden found the courage to end the relationship. In response, Blakely threatened to post intimate photos of her online to humiliate her. The court sentenced Jake Blakely to 3 years in prison for attempting to pervert the course of justice in July 2014. His older brother, Ben Blakely, received a life sentence with a minimum term of 20 years. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Rebecca Payne. Rebecca Charlotte Payne was born on April 19, 1986, in New Milford, Connecticut, to Virginia and Nicholas Payne. She grew up as an only child and graduated from New Milford High School in 2004, where she was active in sports, playing field hockey, track, and tennis. After high school, Rebecca pursued a degree in athletic training at Northeastern University in Boston. The 5-year program focused on preventing and treating athletic injuries. During her 4th year, she became a leader on campus, serving on the Dean's Council and as president of the athletic training club. Rebecca was known for her friendly and outgoing personality, making it easy for her to connect with people from all walks of life. She was always willing to lend a helping hand, which earned her many friends. Her life was tragically cut short when she was found dead in May 2008. The news shocked her friends and left them wondering who could have committed such a heinous crime. The police investigation revealed that there were no signs of forced entry at her home, suggesting that Rebecca may have known her killer and possibly let them in voluntarily. Rebecca's apartment, situated on the 3rd floor, consisted of 2 bedrooms. One of these rooms was where Rebecca lay face down on the floor, lifeless. The trail of blood leading from the living room to this bedroom suggested that the attack had occurred in the living room. This theory was later confirmed by forensic experts who found casings at the scene and determined that Rebecca had been shot 5 times. The bloodstains in the apartment indicated that Rebecca was initially conscious and managed to crawl to the bedroom, but her strength eventually gave out. The detective's task was to identify the person responsible for such brutality. They quickly ruled out the possibility of a theft gone wrong, as Rebecca's valuables remained untouched. The apartment was in disarray, with scattered belongings. However, the detectives suspected that the perpetrator intentionally created this mess to mislead them. Alternatively, the mess could have been a result of Rebecca's struggle to resist her attacker. During the investigation, officers noticed that both the balcony door and the front door were open. Furthermore, signs in the 2nd bedroom indicated that someone else had lived there. After speaking with the apartment manager, they discovered Rebecca didn't live alone, but shared an apartment with a fellow student. This new information led the police to search for the student. The police also questioned everyone living in Parker Hill Apartments, trying to find any leads. The attack on Rebecca was loud and brutal, with 5 gunshot wounds. It was surprising that many residents heard a woman screaming and gunshots between 3 and 4 a.m., but none of them called the police. This lack of action is known as the bystander effect, or Genovese syndrome, a psychological phenomenon where individuals are less likely to help a victim when others are present. During the police investigation, a 1st-floor resident reported seeing a black SUV approach the building on the night of the crime, although he couldn't see the license plates or who got out due to the darkness. The apartment complex had security cameras both inside and outside, which may have captured evidence of the crime. Investigating Rebecca's murder, detectives sought CCTV footage from the building to aid their inquiry. They requested the footage from the building manager, but he revealed that the cameras only operated in real time, and recording required a video cassette and manual activation. Unfortunately, no one had recorded the footage. This discovery led investigators to suspect the building manager, who had found Rebecca's body and had unrestricted access to her apartment as a resident of the building. They thought he might have taken advantage of the lack of surveillance to commit the crime, possibly under the cover of darkness. The police explored all avenues, and their suspicions about the manager intensified after a background check revealed his prior issues with the law related to illegal substances. Furthermore, another detail caught the police's attention. During their investigation, the police noticed dark red stains on the front door of the apartment complex manager's apartment. They collected a sample of the stain and sent it to the lab for analysis. Meanwhile, the manager was taken in for questioning at the police station. The investigators asked him numerous questions, trying to determine if he was hiding any information or if his story would change, but he denied any involvement in Rebecca Payne's death. The manager claimed he had spent the entire night in his apartment with his wife, and she corroborated his alibi when questioned by the police. However, the investigation was put on hold until the lab results came back. Once the report confirmed that the stains on the door were just paint, the manager was released due to lack of evidence. While reviewing video and photo evidence from the crime scene, detectives became interested in a specific card used to pay for public transportation in the Boston area. Since each use of the card was recorded in the system, including the location and time of use, the transit police provided the detectives with CCTV footage related to Rebecca's case. After examining the recordings, detectives discovered that the card had been used by Rebecca. Rebecca was walking home, calm and alone, with no one following her, so the initial footage didn't provide any leads in the case. A few days later, investigators obtained another surveillance video from a camera outside the hospital near the Parker Hill Apartments. This recording showed a black SUV driving by at the same time as Rebecca's attack, matching the witness's description. Although the footage was poor quality and the license plate was not visible, they were able to identify the car as a Ford. The detectives then brought Rebecca's roommate in for questioning to determine if she had any connection to the incident. The woman was shocked by Rebecca's murder and cooperated with the investigators. She had a solid alibi, having moved in with her parents to study for an exam, which her parents confirmed. Although she was cleared of suspicion, she provided useful information. She revealed that Rebecca's boyfriend, Matt, had access to their apartment. The investigators wondered if Matt had a motive to kill Rebecca and contacted him. Matt claimed he had left Boston to live with his parents in New York State around the time of the attack. Although Matt seemed depressed by his girlfriend's death, the investigators were convinced it was an act. Matt's parents confirmed his alibi, but a phone record showed Matt had spoken to Rebecca on the phone around midnight, just hours before her death. But the investigation into Rebecca's murder hit a dead end after Matt was cleared due to cell tower evidence, placing him at his parents' house in New York State at the time of the crime. Years went by with no leads, leaving Rebecca's parents without answers about their daughter's tragic death. However, a breakthrough came in 2012 when the Boston police arrested Anthony White on drug trafficking charges. With a long prison sentence looming, White offered a deal. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he would reveal crucial details about the night Rebecca died. The investigators saw this as a potential break in the long-dormant case and agreed to the deal. After discussing it with the prosecutor, White recounted that on May 20, 2008, he received a call from Cornell Smith, a fellow drug dealer and acquaintance. Smith wanted to meet up and arrived at the designated location with their mutual friend Michael Balba, who was driving a black SUV. The three of them drove to the Parker Hill Apartments, where Balba parked in a spot with a clear view of the apartments. According to White, when Cornell Smith spotted Rebecca through a third-floor window, he exclaimed, "That's her." They waited for a while, watching until the lights in Rebecca's apartment went out, indicating she had likely fallen asleep. Under the cover of darkness, Smith proceeded to climb from the first-floor balcony to the second and finally to the third, where he entered through the open balcony door. Rebecca was not asleep, but rather lying on the couch in the living room when she encountered the intruder. She began screaming, and a brief struggle followed. Cornell Smith then fired 5 shots at her before fleeing the apartment through the front door and driving away. Investigators were skeptical of White's account, suspecting that he fabricated the story based on news reports to secure a lighter prison sentence. The officers were baffled by the motive behind the murder. Why would Cornell Smith kill Rebecca, who was unrelated to his world? But White's next statement shocked and disturbed them. According to White, Rebecca's death was a case of mistaken identity. On the first floor of the Parker Hill Apartments lived 2 sisters who resembled Rebecca. These sisters, who were also illegal drug dealers, were Smith's rivals. In 2012, Cornell Smith was already serving a 12-year prison sentence for selling drugs, which he had been convicted of 2 years prior. Following White's testimony, Cornell Smith was also charged with Rebecca's murder, but he denied any involvement. Before Cornell Smith's court appearance, prosecutors were dealt a devastating blow. Their key witness, Anthony White, had died in prison. Without White's testimony, the case against Smith was in trouble, as there was no physical evidence linking him to Rebecca Payne's apartment. However, investigators had another lead, Michael Balba, who was in the car with White and Smith on the night of the crime. Detectives located Balba and discovered that he owned a black Ford Expedition SUV, which matched the vehicle caught on surveillance camera and the witness's description. Balba was arrested and taken into custody, but he denied any involvement in the case and requested a lawyer. Despite having no concrete evidence against him, investigators hoped that Balba's connection to the crime could still lead to justice for Rebecca. Investigators examined his court file related to drug trafficking. What they found was astonishing. Smith had written several letters to the judge presiding over his trial, and one of them implicated him in Rebecca's murder. In the letters, Smith portrayed himself as superior to others. Although some of the content was nonsensical, one letter stood out as crucial evidence. In it, Smith wrote about an altercation that had taken place in downtown Boston, which ultimately led to Rebecca Payne's tragic death at his hands, a fact he boldly admitted to, stating, "I, Cornell Allen Smith Sr., was responsible." It's unclear why these letters hadn't raised red flags earlier, especially since they were addressed to the judge. The letter proved that Cornell Smith was in Rebecca Payne's apartment at the time of her murder. The trial took place in 2015. Throughout the trial, the district attorney emphasized that Rebecca was an innocent victim with no connection to Smith or his accomplice, Balba. Payne expressed frustration and sadness, saying that seeing Cornell Smith, the person responsible for his daughter Rebecca's death, is a painful reminder of the tragedy and hinders their ability to move forward. Despite Smith's guilty plea and 18 to 20-year prison sentence, Payne emphasizes that nothing can change the fact that Rebecca is gone forever. The judge ordered Smith to face Rebecca's loved ones, acknowledging the immense pain he caused. Her hometown dedicated a tennis court, garden, and scholarship fund in her name to keep her memory alive. Hello, friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Amanda Anderson. Amanda Anderson was born on October 10, 1990, in Fridley, Minnesota, to Mark and Stacy Kennedy Anderson. Amanda grew up to be an aspiring writer with a passion for words, music, and life. She graduated with honors from the Tyler Gospel Chapel School in 2009 and worked at Trinity Mother Frances while attending Tyler Junior College, where she majored in English literature. On September 15, 2010, 15-year-old Nate Anderson found his sister Amanda dead on the floor with multiple bullet holes in her head after returning from a jog. He had gone out to clear his head while doing homework, but became stressed and returned to find the door kicked open. Nate immediately called 911, describing the scene without touching anything. When investigators arrived, Nate recounted the events, still shaken. The investigation revealed that Amanda was shot while sitting on her bed, causing her to fall to the floor. The killer removed shell casings, suggesting a revolver was used. Amanda's death was devastating to her parents, who were deeply religious and couldn't comprehend who would commit such a heinous act. Their daughter had just graduated from high school and was trying to find her way in life. She had no enemies and wished no one harm. The investigators canvassed the neighborhood where the crime took place, speaking with residents to gather information about Amanda and her family. Uniformly, the people they interviewed described the Andersons as a tight-knit, religious family. One neighbor offered a possible theory about Amanda's fate. He pointed out that the area was previously crime-free, but 2 weeks before Amanda's death, a house in the neighborhood was robbed. It's possible that the same person was involved in Amanda's murder. The neighbor suggested that the perpetrator might have seen Amanda's brother, Nate, go for a run, then broken into their house. If Amanda witnessed the break-in, the robber might have shot her to silence her. To explore this theory, the investigators needed evidence to determine whether a botched robbery led to Amanda's death. Typically, burglars who are caught by homeowners will go to great lengths to prevent them from calling the police. However, in this case, nothing was taken from the Anderson home, and Amanda's room was left undisturbed. Amanda's home was burgled, but the thief didn't take anything valuable, including jewelry and a laptop. Amanda's father, Mark, checked the house and confirmed that nothing was missing. This led the investigators to question whether the break-in was actually a robbery gone wrong. The forensic team searched Amanda's room and the entire house for evidence, collecting fingerprints and hair samples that didn't belong to Amanda or her family. They also took the clothes Nate wore when he found Amanda's body, even though they didn't have any visible blood stains. This was consistent with Nate's 911 call, in which he said he hadn't touched anything. The police still sent the clothes to the lab for further analysis, along with other evidence. To begin their investigation, the police first had to rule out Amanda's family members as potential suspects. They asked her father, Mark Anderson, to show them all the weapons in their house, which was a common practice in Texas. Although the Andersons weren't avid hunters, they did occasionally practice shooting. Following Mark's directions, the police found and seized over 10 different types of pistols, rifles, and revolvers from the house. With no clear motives or suspects, the police explored the possibility of criminal gang involvement, but they quickly dismissed it. Their informants also didn't provide any useful information. 2 days after her death, on September 17, 2010, the police received the autopsy report, which revealed that Amanda had been shot 4 times in the head. What was especially puzzling was that every shot would have been fatal. Yet, the perpetrator had continued to pull the trigger 3 more times. The unusual location and direction of the bullet wounds on Amanda's head raised suspicions. The attacker used a small caliber pistol, firing from a distance of at least a yard away, as there were no gunpowder marks around the wounds. 2 wounds were located on top of her head, one near the right temple and one on her forehead, with all shots entering from top to bottom, except for one shot to the right temple that entered at a right angle. This suggested a deliberate and controlled attack, more like an execution. Forensic analysis led investigators to believe that Amanda knew her killer. They based this conclusion on 2 key facts. Firstly, Amanda was sitting on her bed, occupied with her laptop, when she was shot, indicating that she felt comfortable and safe in the presence of the attacker. Secondly, the fact that the attacker was standing next to her suggests a level of familiarity and intimacy. If Amanda had not known the person, she would likely have reacted or taken action when they entered her room, but she did not, implying that she trusted the perpetrator and did not anticipate the attack. Detectives investigating Amanda's death questioned her college friends, learning she was cautious and avoided strangers, drugs, and criminals. Her best friend confirmed she had no enemies on campus. Despite this, they considered that someone might have secretly targeted her. Reviewing college security footage and reports from the past year, they searched for suspicious incidents but found nothing useful. The police revisited the Anderson family to inquire about Amanda's personal life, suspecting a personal motive behind the brutal crime due to the multiple wounds. Amanda's mother was baffled by the incident, describing her daughter as a kind and diligent student who regularly attended church. Although Amanda didn't have a boyfriend at the time of her death, her mother revealed that she had met someone about a year prior, but their relationship ended. The police sought out this individual to learn more about his connection with Amanda and the reasons behind their breakup. Upon questioning, the man revealed that he and Amanda shared some classes and occasionally went to the movies with friends, but they never developed a romantic relationship. They had gone out together a few times, but it didn't progress further. When asked about the last time he saw Amanda, he stated that it was the day before her murder. The police started their investigation again from the beginning, re-examining all the evidence. They focused on Nate's 911 call, which was the starting point of the case. During the call, Nate claimed he didn't enter his sister's room and that someone had shot Amanda. The investigators realized it was impossible for someone standing in the doorway to know Amanda was shot in the head or how many times without entering the room. The police revisited the Anderson house and inspected the door, which Nate said was opened when he got home. Although there were scratches on the door, the lock was intact, leading the police to believe someone was trying to make it look like the door was kicked in. The crime lab analyzed the weapons found in the Anderson house and concluded that one of the pistols was likely the weapon used to shoot Amanda. After a thorough investigation, detectives reached a conclusion. All evidence pointed to a family member as Amanda's killer. The murder weapon, a pistol, was hidden in a secure location, suggesting the killer knew exactly where to find it. Moreover, the killer returned the gun to its hiding place after the crime. On the night of the murder, Amanda's parents had solid alibis. Her father was dining with a friend, and her mother was at work. This left only Amanda and her 15-year-old brother Nate in the house. To find answers, investigators delved deeper into the events of that evening. It turned out that Amanda's father, Mark, had called her to remind her to pick up her mother from work. 12 minutes later, Mark received a call from Nate, who was crying and claimed someone had shot Amanda. However, this call raised a disturbing question. Why did Nate call his father before calling emergency services, unless he was trying to cover his tracks after murdering his own sister? The police required solid proof before making any accusations, as they didn't want to cause further distress to Amanda and Nate's parents. To gather more information, the investigators decided to question Mark Anderson, Nate's father, without directly accusing his son of involvement. During the conversation, Nate's parents became aware that the police suspected their son. When asked about Nate's recent use of the .22 caliber pistol, Mark revealed that he had given the gun to Nate a few days before Amanda's death, and that Nate had fired it in their backyard. The officers went back to the Anderson house and found .22 caliber casings in the backyard that matched the bullets found in Amanda's body. While this was suspicious, it wasn't conclusive evidence. However, 2 weeks later, a crucial clue was found. Nate's clothes, which he wore when he claimed to have found his sister dead, were tested with luminol, revealing traces of blood. Further analysis by a national blood spatter expert suggested that Nate was either in the room when the shooting occurred or was the one who fired the fatal shots. The tests confirmed that his clothes had Amanda's blood on them. Despite this, the Anderson siblings seemed to have a loving relationship. Photos showed them being affectionate, and their parents described them as best friends who often made videos together, including one just days before Amanda's death. The police were left wondering what could have driven Nate to commit such a heinous act. On November 10, 2010, police arrested Nate Anderson at a church, suspecting him of murdering his own sister. The accusation shocked everyone who knew him, as it seemed out of character. The trial began on October 24, 2011, and was an emotionally challenge for the Anderson family. Despite the evidence presented against Nate, his family remains supportive and refuses to believe he is capable of such a crime. According to his grandmother, Dolores Anderson, Nate is a kind and innocent boy who would never harm his sister. His parents, too, are adamant that he is not responsible for Amanda's death. For his mother, Stacy Anderson, the whole ordeal has been a nightmare. She is still adjusting to the loss of her daughter and now has to cope with her son's arrest. Mark expressed his outrage and disbelief at the accusation that his son killed his sister Amanda. The brutality of the crime, including the fact that Amanda was shot 4 times, has led Mark to conclude that Nate could not have committed the crime. Initially, Mark had some doubts about Nate's involvement, but once he learned about the 4 gunshots, he became convinced of his son's innocence. Mark is critical of the authorities, accusing them of ignoring evidence that exonerates Nate and instead focusing on evidence that supports their own case. He feels that they have already made up their minds about Nate's guilt, despite the fact that an expert had recommended that Nate be tried in juvenile court, not adult court. After Amanda's death, investigators found evidence in the Anderson home that shed light on the case. Prosecutors discovered that Nate's computer had a history of visits to adult websites and violent drawings. Furthermore, a text message on Amanda's phone mentioned someone should be shot, but the context indicated it was a joke about Nate not helping with chores and playfully shooting staples at Amanda. An expert testified that this evidence could be a motive for the crime. However, Nate's attorney argued that the evidence was not unusual or incriminating. Ultimately, Nate accepted a plea deal in February 2012 and pleaded guilty to a first-degree crime. He confessed to a psychologist and his parents that he had killed Amanda. In a statement, Nate and Amanda's parents shared Nate's confession. According to Mark Anderson, Nate told him that he shot Amanda with a pistol found in their home and asked for forgiveness, which he granted. Stacy, the mother, expressed the immense difficulty she experienced as a mother who loves both her children. Nate Anderson has been sentenced to 20 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years. His attorney believes that agreeing to the plea deal was in Nate's best interest, as neither Nate nor his family wanted the case to go to trial. Regarding the motive behind the crime, Nate's attorneys declined to provide details, saying only that they know what happened and are choosing not to discuss it further. However, they did reveal that Nate has shown remorse for his actions, has asked for forgiveness, and has received it. The attorneys described the process of coming to terms with what happened as difficult and emotional. The authorities have determined that the incident was a hate crime, as there was no evidence of any other trauma. According to the Smith County Sheriff's Office, Nate will be eligible to apply for parole. To our channel, today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shannon Monty. Shannon Monty was born on April 6, 1997. When she was a young child, her parents immigrated to the United States and settled in Waukesha, Wisconsin, where she grew up and attended school. Her parents thought Waukesha was an ideal place to raise their children because of its friendly atmosphere and good schools. Shannon was a bright, attractive, and outgoing person who made friends easily. After graduating from high school in 2015, Shannon enrolled at the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee. She was interested in social work and wanted to help people in need. Despite her busy schedule, she worked part-time at an organic food company with her father. It was there that she met Quentin Neal, a 26-year-old man who shared her passion for helping others. They bonded quickly over their similar values and interests. Shannon had always dreamed of building a shelter for women and children, and Quentin was equally committed to making a positive impact. As their friendship blossomed into romance, they decided to live together. Shannon was thrilled to have found someone like Quentin, who cared deeply for her and made their relationship a happy and fulfilling one. Shannon's parents were making plans with her for their future together until her sudden disappearance. On April 13, 2018, Shannon failed to pick up her younger brother from school and didn't show up for work, which was unusual for her. Her phone was found to be turned off, and she had not informed anyone that she would be missing her shift. Her parents went to the police station the same day, unable to locate their daughter on their own. Initially, detectives thought that Shannon, being young, might have simply run away with friends or taken a spontaneous trip. However, her parents quickly dismissed this idea, as it was out of character for Shannon to cut off contact and ignore her family's worry. Shannon's mother provided crucial details to the investigators, which led them to take the case more seriously and pursue it further. Shannon's room still contained some of her money, documents, and valuables, which was a concerning factor in her disappearance. When questioned, Shannon's parents revealed that her boyfriend was 27-year-old Quentin Neal. When investigators contacted Quentin by phone, he claimed to have no knowledge of Shannon's whereabouts. Shannon had been living with her parents, and Quentin said he hadn't seen Shannon that day. The investigators asked Quentin to come to the police station for questioning. Quentin appeared anxious and agreed to come immediately. When he arrived, Shannon's parents were still present. Quentin told the investigators that the last time he saw Shannon was over 24 hours ago, when she left his house to pick up her little brother from school. The investigators asked Quentin if he knew where Shannon might be, but he didn't have any idea. However, he did remember that another man had been interested in Shannon, despite knowing she was in a relationship and pregnant. According to Quentin, this man continued to pursue Shannon even after she told him to leave her alone. The next day, the police began interviewing Shannon's friends to gather more information. They also distributed details about the search for Shannon to all police stations in Wisconsin. Later that day, they found a disturbing discovery that Shannon's car was found in Milwaukee, about 20 minutes from her home. Forensic investigators thoroughly examined the car but found no signs of a crime, such as a carjacking or struggle. Shannon's purse and phone were missing, but they did find fingerprints from 3 people: Shannon, Quentin, and an unknown individual. The man mentioned by Quentin was brought in for questioning. He claimed to be distraught over Shannon's disappearance, but denied Quentin's allegations, saying they were merely friends and never pursued a romantic relationship. However, a significant break in the case came when Anshuman, Shannon's mother, found Shannon's Apple Watch and reviewed Shannon's text messages. She took the watch to the police station, allowing investigators to examine it further. The investigators discovered that Quentin and Shannon had arranged to meet on the day she went missing, contradicting Quentin's earlier statement. The text messages also revealed that Quentin had been abusive towards Shannon, although she was pregnant with his child. Quentin had apologized for his behavior and begged her not to leave him. The investigators suspected Quentin was not a good person due to his criminal history, including a prison sentence for robbery and multiple arrests for assault and minor offenses. Shannon's parents had become increasingly suspicious of him as they noticed their daughter was often depressed. Quentin's emotional instability regarding the baby Shannon was only added to their concerns. After Shannon told her parents about the pregnancy, they met with Quentin, who promised to care for both Shannon and the baby. However, Shannon's mother later discovered severe bruising on her daughter's arms and learned that Quentin was responsible for the injuries. When Shannon's cell phone was last detected near Quentin's residence on April 13th, the investigators became worried they might not find her alive. They quickly obtained a search warrant and searched Quentin's house, but initially found no signs of a crime scene or struggle, as the place was clean and appeared normal. Forensics investigators used luminol on the first floor, but it revealed no evidence. However, when they applied it to the basement, they found numerous traces, strongly suggesting that Shannon was likely deceased. Quentin Neal was subsequently arrested and taken into custody. Before questioning him, investigators analyzed his phone records, discovering that he had recently searched online for ways to remove evidence of a crime using a certain chemical. He was apparently trying to conceal his involvement. During the interrogation, Quentin repeatedly denied any knowledge of Shannon's whereabouts and claimed to have no connection to her disappearance. The investigators finally had concrete evidence, which led Quentin to change his story. He eventually agreed to confess to the crime, but he claimed he acted in self-defense when he took Shannon's life. Quentin explained that Shannon had visited his house to discuss their future and their child. However, the conversation turned into an argument, and Shannon went into the kitchen. She picked up a knife and gun stored there for emergencies. According to Quentin, Shannon then threatened him, prompting him to act quickly. The two got into a physical altercation, which ultimately ended in Shannon's death. Quentin stressed to the investigators that he had only defended himself. Although they were skeptical due to Quentin's lack of defensive wounds, they continued to listen to his account. Quentin Neal panicked when he realized he had done something irreversible. He hid evidence of the crime in a large suitcase in the basement of his house, where the incident occurred. Later, he led the police to a storage unit 6 miles from his residence, where the suitcase was stored. Inside, detectives found the body of Shannon, Quentin's girlfriend, who was pregnant at the time. Shannon's wrists and ankles were bound with duct tape, contradicting Quentin's claim of self-defense. Forensic experts determined that Shannon died from 2 gunshot wounds to the head and had additional knife wounds on her body. On April 18, 2018, detectives informed Shannon's parents of the devastating discovery. Quentin was subsequently indicted for the murder of Shannon and her unborn child. The evidence gathered, including their correspondence on the day of the incident, was sufficient to secure a guilty verdict. According to the evidence, Shannon had visited Quentin's house to discuss her pregnancy, but an argument ensued, and she never left the house alive. The trial of Quentin Neal was initially set to begin in the spring of 2019, but it was delayed by 3 months due to anonymous letters received by attorneys and court officials just days before the start date. These letters claimed that someone other than Quentin Neal was responsible for Shannon's death. However, when the author of the letters was identified as one of Quentin's friends, who had written them in an attempt to confuse the investigation and help Quentin, the judge ruled that the letters were not relevant. Quentin Neal was facing the possibility of capital punishment and denied the charges against him, claiming he had acted in self-defense. 15 months had passed since Shannon's death, and her family was eager for justice. Before her death, Shannon had been working to support victims of domestic violence and help women and children. Her family had planned to build a shelter home, a dream that was put on hold when Shannon became a victim herself. On July 15, 2019, Quentin Neal accepted a plea deal with investigators, admitting his guilt in the murder of Shannon and her child. As part of the agreement, prosecutors dropped their pursuit of the death penalty. 2 days later, on July 17, 2019, Neal was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences by the Milwaukee County Circuit Court. He will not be eligible for parole, ensuring he will spend the remainder of his life in prison. During his sentencing, Neal remained silent, never explaining his motivations for the crime. Shannon's family expressed relief that justice had been served. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Heather Jackson. Heather Jackson was 23 years old in 2012, and her life was a challenge. She had recently separated from her husband, Wayne, and they were in the process of getting a divorce. They had 2 young children, 3-year-old Selena and 1-year-old Wayne Jr. Despite the difficulties they faced as parents, Heather was determined to provide a happy life for her kids. She had found a new home on a quiet street near Lake Erie, which brought her some sense of relief. Heather and Wayne had been high school sweethearts, but their marriage had fallen apart. On September 8, 2012, Heather's friend Danielle Sorrell arrived at her house at 2:30 p.m. for a prearranged meeting. However, when Danielle knocked on the door, no one answered. She checked all the doors, but they were locked, leaving her wondering what was going on. Danielle was puzzled that Heather and her kids weren't at home despite their planned meeting. Even if Heather had changed her plans, she would have alerted Danielle. So, Danielle called Heather's mom, Jody, who was very close to her daughter and spoke with her daily. However, Jody couldn't reach Heather that day either. Danielle then contacted all of Heather's friends, but none of them knew her whereabouts. Her concern grew when she spotted Selena's pacifier on the porch. Danielle knew Heather would never leave the house without the pacifier, so something was off. Hours passed, but Heather still hadn't contacted her mom. Jody's unease called the police to request a check. The officers arrived, knocked on the door, and got no response. They circled the house, peeking through the windows, but saw nothing suspicious. Since they found no signs of forced entry or foul play, they couldn't enter the house without a warrant and left. At approximately 7:30 p.m., Heather's friends, Thomas Hansen and Dan Reiner, arrived at her house after discovering she was missing. When no one answered the front door, Reiner proceeded to the back porch, forced the door open, and entered the home. Inside, they found Heather's naked body in the bedroom and immediately called 911. Sergeant Eric Gray Bill, a Sandusky police officer, responded to the scene and entered the house. He discovered Heather's body lodged between the box spring and mattress in her bedroom, with a ligature around her neck. The TV was still on, but the children were nowhere to be found. Their room was empty. During their search of the house, the officers noticed a utility closet door that they had not yet checked. When Sergeant Bill opened the door, he found stacked boxes with objects behind them. Behind the boxes, he discovered the lifeless bodies of Heather's children. The police immediately secured the crime scene. The officers were deeply shaken by the discovery, having never encountered a crime of such magnitude before. Heather's family and friends were even more devastated after the forensic examination results were revealed. According to court documents, Dr. Diana Scala Barnett, the deputy coroner for Lucas County, performed the autopsies on the 3 victims. Her findings showed that Heather Jackson's cause of death was ligature strangulation. Additionally, Dr. Barnett observed that Heather's rectum was unusually open after death, suggesting that an object was likely inserted into the area around the time of her death, causing it to remain in that state. Dr. Scala Barnett testified that both Wayne Jackson and Selena Jackson also died from ligature strangulation. She noted that Selena's underwear was rolled up, indicating that the body had been redressed. Selena also had a rectal dilation similar to her mother's, again indicating that something was in her rectum at or about the time of death. Julie Cox, a forensic scientist at the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, testified that there was seminal fluid on the anal swabs obtained from Selena Jackson. Cox also noticed a stain in Selena Jackson's underwear, so she cut a small portion of that stained area for testing and determined that it contained a sperm cell. The police were determined to quickly catch the monster responsible for the crime. Since Heather's house was located next to Firelands Regional Medical Center, investigators obtained footage from the building's surveillance cameras, which they hoped would lead them to the perpetrator. Reviewing the CCTV footage, they identified a car that drove up to Heather's house at 10:57 p.m. Although the camera was far from the house and the darkness made it difficult to see, the car's headlights provided some clues about what happened. The footage showed the car backing into the driveway and remaining there for 11 minutes. At 11:08 p.m., the headlights turned on again, and the driver departed. Meanwhile, Thomas Hansen and Dan Reiner, the men who discovered Heather's body, were brought to the police station for questioning. The investigators questioned them separately, starting with Dan Reiner, who had called 911. Dan and Heather were friends, and when Dan discovered she was missing, he went to her house to look for her. He had to push the door hard to get in. After calling 911, the police asked Dan for a DNA sample, which he willingly provided. The results are nothing special, and he was released. The police then questioned Thomas Hansen, who claimed to have spoken with Heather on the phone the previous night. He said he drove to her house around 11 p.m. but didn't go inside. Instead, they chatted briefly outside, and then he left. This revelation helped the police identify the driver of the car seen on CCTV footage, Thomas Hansen. Hansen also revealed that he didn't enter Heather's house because she wasn't alone. There was a man with her, someone Hansen knew as Josh. Hansen's account matched Reiner's, stating that when he learned Heather was missing, he went to her house to investigate. After releasing the initial suspect, the police shifted their focus to a new suspect, Josh Case, who was at Heather's house on the night of her death. They quickly located him and brought him in for questioning. Josh admitted to knowing Heather for years and being at her house that evening, where they watched TV while the children slept. He also claimed to have gone to the store to buy breakfast for the kids, returning to the house before a friend picked him up at around 1 a.m. Josh acknowledged having consensual intimate contact with Heather. Investigators verified his alibi by reviewing the store's CCTV footage, which confirmed he entered the store at 11:20 p.m. While this corroboration supported his testimony, it did not rule out the possibility that Josh might still be involved in Heather's tragic death. Heather's last known contact was with Josh Case, making him the prime suspect. He provided a DNA sample, which was compared to the DNA found on the victims' bodies. The results eliminated Thomas Hansen and Dan Reiner as suspects, as their DNA did not match. However, Josh's DNA matched the DNA on Heather's body, but not on her children's bodies, indicating another person was present that night. This was not surprising, as Josh had previously admitted to an intimate relationship with Heather. The police now focused on finding the DNA of the second person involved. They quickly ruled out Heather's husband, Wayne, who was going through a divorce with Heather and lived in another state. The investigators turned to Heather's cell phone records for answers. The records showed Heather was active on her phone, including on the night of her death. Her last phone conversation took place at 3:12 a.m. and lasted 30 seconds. The police's next step was to identify the owner of the phone number Heather last spoke to. 36 hours after Heather's death, police obtained another CCTV footage that showed a white car arriving at her house around 3 a.m. This timing coincided with when Heather stopped using her phone, suggesting a possible connection. The car left about an hour later, by which time Heather, Selena, and Wayne were likely already dead. Although the footage was not clear enough to reveal the license plate, investigators identified the car as a Cadillac. Further investigation led police to the owner of the phone number Heather had called before her death. The number belonged to 41-year-old Curtis Clinton, who had a 30-second conversation with Heather at 3:12 a.m. A background check on Clinton revealed a disturbing history. He had been released from prison in February after serving 13 years for 2 counts of felonious assault and manslaughter. Clinton had pleaded guilty to the 1997 death of 18-year-old Misty Keckler, who was found strangled, naked, and bound in a bathtub. The similarities between Keckler's death and Heather's raised concerns among investigators, especially given that Clinton had been released from prison just 6 months before Heather and her children's deaths. This raised the possibility that Clinton had returned to his violent ways after his release. Curtis Clinton became the prime suspect in the murder of Heather and her children, and the police urgently needed to locate him to prevent any further harm. The police visited Clinton's last known address but were unable to find him. However, they soon discovered a white Cadillac parked on a nearby street. A search of the vehicle revealed a receipt from a gas station dated the night of the crime. The investigators reviewed the gas station's CCTV footage, which showed Clinton purchasing water and beer while appearing calm. This was after the time Heather and her children were killed. The police were received information that a patient named Curtis Clinton had been admitted to a local hospital. They immediately went to the hospital, found Clinton, and arrested him, taking him into custody at the police station. Clinton denied any involvement in the deaths of Heather Jackson and her children. He admitted to having dated Heather for 5 months and having an intimate relationship with her. According to Clinton, Heather had many personal problems and had asked him for financial and emotional support. He claimed that he didn't know her children well. Clinton initially stated that he last saw Heather on Thursday, September 6th, when he gave her $328 and they had intimate contact. However, when the investigator showed him phone records indicating that he had spoken with Heather at 3:12 a.m. on September 8th, Clinton corrected himself, saying that it was actually Friday night or early Saturday morning when he last saw her. Clinton claimed that he didn't stay long at Heather's house, dropping off the money and then leaving after their intimate encounter. He couldn't recall what time he arrived home. Clinton suggested that someone else must have gone to Heather's house after he left, as Heather had mentioned receiving an irritating call or text while he was with her. When confronted with the fact that he was the last person to have contact with Heather, Clinton expressed doubt. Curtis Clinton was arrested and jailed after his DNA was found on the victims. In a recorded call to his mother, Clinton expressed regret and confusion, saying he wished he'd sought help. He also hinted at a violent temper, suggesting it could happen again. His mother acknowledged the family's struggles, but said they'd learned to manage them, and noted that Clinton had stopped taking his medication, which contributed to his behavior. Clinton told his mother that he planned to plead guilty to the charges and accept whatever consequences came his way. The investigation led to multiple charges against Clinton. Furthermore, it was discovered that just 6 days before the murder of Heather and her children, Clinton had attacked a 17-year-old girl, choking her and forcing her to engage in intimate contact. The victim had gone to the hospital, where police collected DNA evidence that also linked Clinton to the crime. Clinton asked to move the trial to a different location, claiming that the local media had already publicized the case so much that it would be hard to find impartial jurors. However, the court denied this request. Clinton brutally murdered Heather, Selena, and Wayne, and the forensic evidence, including his DNA found inside Selena's body, revealed the horrific details of his crimes. Despite facing the death penalty, Clinton did everything he could to avoid it. When given the opportunity to speak before being sentenced, he did not show remorse or apologize to the victims' families. Instead, he attacked prosecutor Kevin Baxter and vowed to win on appeal and have his case retried. In November 2013, Clinton was sentenced to death for the brutal murders of Heather Jackson and her 2 young children. The judge also sentenced Clinton to life in prison without parole for what he did to 3-year-old Selena before strangling her, and added another 10 years for assaulting a 17-year-old girl 6 days before killing Heather and her children. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Jolene Cummings. Jolene Cummings, a 34-year-old mother of 3, lived in Fernandina Beach and was going through a divorce from her husband, Jason. As part of their arrangement, Jason would pick up the children on weekends from their home in Fernandina Beach, where Jolene lived with them. Jolene worked as a hairdresser at Tangle's Hair Salon. On Saturday, May 12, 2018, she worked until 5 p.m. The next day was Mother's Day and also her 34th birthday. According to their plan, Jolene was supposed to meet Jason in the parking lot of the Winn-Dixie supermarket in Hilliard on Sunday to pick up the children. However, Jolene failed to show up, and Jason was unable to reach her by phone. Jolene's mother, Ann Johnson, also tried to contact her to wish her a happy birthday, but all her calls went straight to voicemail. Jason eventually called and to ask if she knew why Jolene hadn't arrived to pick up the children. Jolene failed to pick up her children, which was unusual behavior for her. Concerned, Ann reported Jolene missing to the police on Monday, May 14th, after being unable to contact Jolene. The police immediately launched an investigation and issued a missing person poster with Jolene's photo. They also put out an alert for her 2006 Ford Expedition. On the same day, police and volunteers searched the forest area near Jolene's home but found nothing. The police learned that Jolene was last seen leaving work at the Tangles Salon on Saturday, May 12th. The salon's owner reported that Jolene and her coworker, Jennifer, had closed the salon together at 5 p.m. that day. According to Jennifer, they had each gotten into their own cars and driven away separately after work. The police discovered that Jolene's last phone activity was an outgoing call made while she was still at work on May 12th. The police were determined to find a lead and began scrutinizing Jolene's personal life. They focused on her ex-boyfriend Jason, as spouses often turn against each other during divorce and custody battles. Meanwhile, detectives uncovered that 5 days before Jolene vanished, a neighbor reported a loud argument at Jolene's residence. The dispute was between Jolene and Jason, with their children present. Jason had asked Jolene to let him stay with her temporarily, but she refused, knowing the police were searching for him for violating his parole. In a fit of rage, Jason began destroying property. By the time the police arrived, Jason had seemingly escaped, but the truth was unclear. After Jolene disappeared, the police began to focus on Jason as a person of interest in her disappearance. On the second day of the investigation, May 15, 2018, several significant events unfolded. The police discovered Jason hiding in Jolene's house, where he had been since the day Jolene's neighbor reported a loud argument to the authorities. He was subsequently arrested and taken to the police station for questioning. During the interrogation, Jason claimed to have no involvement in Jolene's disappearance. Meanwhile, the police found a crucial lead. Jolene's SUV was discovered parked outside a Home Depot hardware store, just a few miles from her workplace. The vehicle showed no signs of damage or struggle. After a 2-day break, Jolene's salon reopened on May 15th. At 10 a.m., the police visited the salon to speak with Jennifer Sibbert, the last person to see Jolene before the weekend. However, Jennifer didn't show up for work, claiming she had an urgent matter to attend to in another city. Thanks to CCTV footage, investigators made a breakthrough in Jolene's disappearance. The footage revealed Jolene's car entering the parking lot of a hardware store, where it was later found by the police. Notably, Jennifer had claimed that she and Jolene closed the salon together at 5 p.m. on May 12th, but the CCTV footage showed Jolene's car arriving at the hardware store at 1:17 a.m. on May 13th, a gap of 8 hours and 17 minutes. At a press conference, Sheriff Bill Leipert explained that the CCTV footage showed Jolene's car parking at 1:17 a.m. on Sunday. The video showed the driver waiting for a few minutes before getting out. But instead of seeing Jolene exit the car, the footage surprisingly showed Jennifer Sibbert, the same hairdresser who claimed to be the last person to see Jolene. After leaving Jolene's car, Jennifer went to the gas station across the street. The gas station footage shows Jennifer entering the store, where she purchased a bottle of water and requested that an employee call her a taxi. The taxi was later confirmed to have taken her to her workplace, a salon. According to the gas station employee, Jennifer appeared to be annoyed and had visible, fresh abrasions on her face. As a result, Jennifer Sibbert became the primary suspect in the investigation, and the police began searching for her. However, the address she had provided on her job application was found to be fake. Despite her attempts to hide, Jennifer was eventually found. On May 16th, police officers spotted her black Kia Soul parked between two trucks in a recreation area, just 50 meters from the salon. Upon approaching the vehicle, the officers discovered Jennifer sleeping inside. Jennifer Sibbert was arrested and initially charged with stealing a car belonging to Jolene Cummings. When police brought her in for questioning, they noticed abrasions on her hands and face and asked her to explain them. She claimed she had been bitten by bed bugs. Further investigation revealed that she was homeless, often sleeping in her car and using a local fitness center shower. As investigators dug deeper, they made a surprising discovery that Jennifer Sibbert was not her real name. In fact, she was actually Kimberly Kessler, born in 1968 and reported missing in Pennsylvania in 2012. It turned out that she had been using the identity of Jennifer Marie Sibbert, a 13-year-old girl who had died in a car accident in Germany in 1987 and was buried in Pennsylvania. The investigation into Kimberly Kessler's case revealed a trail of deception dating back to 1996, when she began using stolen identities. At that time, she was living in Pennsylvania. Since then, Kessler has assumed at least 18 different identities and lived in 33 cities across 14 states. Many of these aliases bear similar names, which she often obtained by stealing names from gravestones and cemeteries. The police charged Kimberly Kessler with forgery after discovering she had been using fake names. A search of a storage unit she rented uncovered several suspicious items, including 4 wigs, a bag containing 2 cut-off hair tails, and 3 mobile phones. However, the most significant evidence was the discovery of Jolene Cummings's DNA on Kessler's sock and shoe. Additionally, scissors found in Kessler's car also contained Jolene's DNA. A review of Kessler's phone search history revealed that Kessler was preparing for Jolene's disappearance, which was not an accident. 2 weeks before Jolene vanished on May 12, Kessler searched for information on murder cases, including a query about a man who was charged with murder after his co-worker's remains were found in his yard. She also searched for information on co-workers who had been found guilty of murder, even when the victim's body had not been found. Kessler's search history also included queries about how to use a tourniquet, as well as information on female murderers in Florida and autopsy procedures. Furthermore, she searched for information on post-mortem changes, which suggests that she was trying to learn about what happens to the body after death. These search queries are particularly suspicious in light of a discovery made by the owner of the hair salon where Jolene worked. The owner reported that the plant in the salon had been replaced, which may be connected to Kessler's search for information on how to dispose of a body. On May 13th, the day Jolene failed to pick up her kids, Kessler conducted internet searches at 12:05 p.m. for indoor palm and then at 12:06 p.m. for variation palm tree. The police analyzed CCTV footage from a nearby home goods store and found that Kessler visited the store on May 14th at 2:39 p.m. and left 30 minutes later with a palm plant, which was later found at the Tangles Hair Salon. Kessler's online searches continued, with Jolene Cummings I Have Vanished on May 15th at 6:13 p.m. and No Body No Crime on May 16th at 6:27 p.m. Forensic experts used luminol and ultraviolet light to examine the hair salon and discovered evidence of a serious crime, as the room glowed under the testing. On May 22nd, the sheriff announced during a press conference that they had gathered sufficient evidence to conclude that Jolene Cummings was dead, although some evidence was being withheld to protect the investigation. Further investigation revealed that Jolene had expressed concerns about her coworker Jennifer, the new hairdresser, to another employee at the Tangles salon, stating that Jennifer seemed suspicious and was hiding something. This conversation took place about a week before Jolene's disappearance. Witnesses reported that Jolene and Jennifer had a tense relationship, and one person even saw them arguing on May 9th, just 3 days before Jolene vanished. The Tangles Hair Salon eventually closed on June 5, 2018. The hair salon footage shows of Kessler visiting the dumpster at least 4 times. In the first footage, taken shortly after midnight, Kessler is seen doing something near the dumpster. At 8:08 a.m., she returns to throw away a heavy-looking white garbage bag. 14 minutes later, she disposes of another similar bag. The final footage, taken an hour before midnight, shows Kessler lifting a waste container to empty its contents, suggesting it also holds something heavy. The Walmart security footage revealed what Kessler had thrown away in the dumpster. The video showed her purchasing items at the self-checkout, including garbage bags, cleaning supplies, latex gloves, and an electric knife. This discovery led the police to investigate further. They found that a local waste management company was taking trash to a landfill in Georgia. In July 2018, nearly 200 people searched the landfill for a week, but the sheriff did not disclose what they found, citing the ongoing investigation. Near the dumpster where Kessler disposed of the white garbage bags, the police discovered a piece of jewelry, women's shoes, and a blue plastic container that matched one found in Kessler's storage unit. The container contained Jolene Cummings's DNA. Although Jolene's body was not found, the police had sufficient evidence to arrest Kessler for her murder. Kessler's first court appearance was on January 17, 2019, where she pleaded not guilty. However, the trial was delayed for several years due to concerns about Kessler's sanity. She went on a hunger strike, losing significant weight, and her court appearances often ended in outbursts of anger. In 2021, Kessler underwent mandatory treatment before the court session, and she was eventually deemed competent to stand trial. During a press conference, Sheriff Leeper made a statement saying that they were sending Kessler to Florida State Prison, where she would spend the rest of her life. Sadly, Jolene Cummings's body has never been recovered or found. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Valerie Tiemann. Valerie Joy Tiemann was born on December 31, 1981, in Salem, Virginia, to parents Sarah Jean Sampson Tiemann and Jean Allen Harmon. She spent her childhood in Greenville, South Carolina, and graduated from Hampton Park Christian School in 2000. Valerie pursued her passion for beauty by earning a degree in cosmetology from Bob Jones University. Valerie was a bright and friendly person, known for her warm smile and outgoing personality. She had a flair for drama and speech, and was also musically inclined, playing the piano and flute. With her cosmetology skills, Valerie worked in various salons, spas, and pageants. In her personal life, Valerie was in a relationship with Matt Gotcha, whom she met through a mutual friend when she was 22 years old. Although they had distinct personalities, Valerie being outgoing and cheerful, while Matt was more reserved, their differences did not create problems in their relationship. Valerie and Matt got married in 2004 and initially lived happily together in Matt's small house. However, over time, Valerie's parents noticed a change in her behavior. Matt became controlling, restricting Valerie's access to their finances and forcing her to open a separate bank account to have some independence. As time went on, Matt's behavior worsened, and he began to blame Valerie for all their problems. Valerie endured years of emotional pain, but eventually, she couldn't take it anymore. After 10 years of marriage, Valerie and Matt divorced in 2014. Valerie found solace with Luke Tiemann, a reliable and loving man who had served in the army for 10 years, including tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. Luke helped Valerie overcome her past traumas, and her relatives noticed a marked improvement in her mood. She began to smile and laugh again, returning to her cheerful self. On June 6, 2014, Luke and Valerie got married, starting a new chapter in their lives together. They settled into Luke's parents' house in Fairfield, Maine, while Valerie's parents lived in South Carolina. Luke and Valerie went back to Maine after visiting her family in South Carolina in August 2016. A week after returning to Maine, Luke started chatting with another woman on Facebook. On August 24, 2016, several people saw Luke with this new woman, and that night, they had intimate relations. It appears Valerie found out about Luke's affair. That same night, Valerie tried calling Luke 31 times within 5 hours. The next day, on August 25, 2016, a mutual friend told Valerie that Luke was pursuing other women and claiming they were separated. Valerie sent several messages to this friend, expressing her heartbreak but trusting that God had a plan and that Luke would never find a better partner than her. On August 26, 2016, he moved in with he was having an affair with and told her that Valerie had left him for another man. Valerie, who normally called her parents in South Carolina every week, suddenly stopped responding to their calls and text messages for over a week. Her parents reached out to her boyfriend Luke to ask about her well-being. Luke responded a day later, saying that they were fine and that he loved her. However, 13 days passed and Valerie's parents still couldn't get in touch with Valerie, so they decided to call Luke's father for information. He told them that Valerie had been missing for about 2 weeks and asked what he should do with her belongings. Valeria's father spoke with Luke T-Man, asking why he hadn't reported her missing. Luke claimed Valeria left him for another man and would tell her parents herself. However, her parents were skeptical, as this behavior was uncharacteristic of Valeria, and they believed she would have reached out to them. On September 9, 2016, Valeria's father filed a missing persons report with the Fairfield Police Department. Detectives investigated by visiting Luke's parents' home, where Valerie lived. They spoke with Luke's mother, Laurel T. Mann, who claimed no knowledge of their whereabouts. 2 weeks after Valerie's disappearance, Laurel packed up Valerie's belongings in garbage bags, showing apparent indifference to her well-being. The police were searching for Luke T. Mann to ask him some questions about Valerie's disappearance, but they couldn't find him. When they finally spoke to him 5 days later, he claimed that he had last seen Valerie 2 weeks prior at a local Walmart. According to Luke, Valerie had stayed in the car while he went shopping, but when he returned, she was gone. Luke said he tried to contact Valerie by phone and text, but she didn't respond. He assumed she had left him for another man, whom he didn't know by name. Luke claimed their marriage was nearing its end and that Valerie had mentioned someone else during a conversation. However, Valerie's family was unaware of anyone other than Luke in her life, casting doubt on his claims. Police sought public help through the media, sharing a photo of Valerie and asking for sightings. Detectives found the situation suspicious, including discarded belongings and Luke T-Man's lack of effort to find his wife, raising questions about his involvement. To verify Luke's story, investigators reviewed Walmart surveillance footage from the day Valerie vanished. However, after examining the CCTV recordings, they found no evidence of Luke, his truck, or Valerie. This discovery indicated Luke had lied, suggesting he was hiding something. Luke's infidelity with Billy Joe was no secret. He admitted to cheating on Valerie, hoping to move on. Billy Joe claimed to know nothing about Valerie's disappearance, thinking Luke was divorced from her. But a local resident approached the police with a disturbing find that Valerie's driver's license in a parking lot near Billy Joe's home. Suspicion grew due to the proximity of the license to Billy Joe's home. It seemed unlikely Valerie would abandon her belongings and ID if she had run off with someone. 10 days after her father's report, Luke repeated his story to News Center Maine, claiming he didn't find Valerie at Walmart. However, Walmart's CCTV footage contradicted his alibi. On September 20, 2016, detectives obtained a search warrant for Luke's parents' property in Fairfield, where Valerie last lived. Police dogs trained to detect human remains joined the search. Just 5 minutes in, a dog found something suspicious in the woods. Officers dug up a woman's body wrapped in a blanket, along with some unusual items. The investigation found several items near Valerie's body: a bag of potato chips, perfume, sweet tarts, a flannel shirt, and a mason jar with a handwritten note. A wedding ring was discovered later, hidden among the jar's contents of dirt, stems, and twigs. Sergeant Scott Bryant, who found the ring, noted it was larger than his own wedding ring. The handwritten note, which was worn and dirty, stated that it was for his one and only Joy, Valerie Flower Forever, and that he loved Valerie Joy Tierman. It continued by expressing that she should rest in peace with his heart and Jesus, and that he couldn't wait to see her again. The note was signed Lie Bear, a nickname Luke later explained to the police was used by him in several other notes found in Valerie's purse. These items, including the note and the other evidence, linked Luke to Valerie's death. The body was taken to the forensic medical examiner's office for an autopsy and identification. Unfortunately for Valeria's parent, they had to face the devastating news that the body found behind their house was indeed their daughter Valerie. Not only did Valerie and Luke live in the house, but also Luke's parents and his younger brother, Sam. Detectives searched the property and found landscaping tools belonging to Sam in the barn, which had been used to dig the grave site. A device used to consume an illegal substance was also found in the barn. Investigations revealed Sam's use of a banned substance, previously mentioned by Valerie. Police now suspect Sam's involvement in Valerie's death. A .45 caliber handgun, purchased by Luke in 2015, was found in his parents' bedroom. Luke's parents claimed ignorance, but this is hard to believe. Upon further searches by investigators around the same time of Valerie's burial site discovery, Luke was located alongside his new girlfriend, Billie Joe. Luke T-Man was arrested and taken to the police station for questioning. He told investigators that his wife, Valerie, had died almost a month ago, on August 25th, from an overdose of illegal substances. However, Luke claimed that he had not informed Valerie's parents about her death because he did not want them to know that she was using illegal substances. According to Luke, he did not call 911 after Valerie's death because he knew it would be pointless, as she was already dead. Instead, he left her body in bed until evening, when it got dark outside. He then wrapped her in a blanket, left a note, and took her to the woods behind their house, where he and his brother, Sam, dug a hole and buried her. Luke claimed that Valerie had not suffered any physical injuries before her death. However, the autopsy results revealed that Luke was lying. No traces of banned substances were found in Valerie's blood, only prescription drugs. Moreover, the autopsy showed that Valerie's cause of death was 2 bullet wounds, one to the head and one to the neck. The ballistics examination revealed that the bullets were fired from a .45 caliber handgun, which matched the gun found in Luke's parents' bedroom during a search. Luke admitted to buying the gun about a year ago, but claimed that he had purchased it for his father. Luke T-Man was accused of killing his 34-year-old wife, Valerie T-Man. During the investigation, the police found no evidence to suggest that his parents or younger brother were involved in the crime. However, Luke claimed that his brother Sam helped him bury Valerie's body. The police disputed this, stating that Sam was not at home at the time of the incident. It remains unclear whether Luke's parents knew about or were involved in Valerie's death, but it is peculiar that they didn't hear the gunshots. The trial against Luke began on April 2, 2018, in Somerset County Superior Court in Skowhegan, Maine. Luke pleaded not guilty, claiming that someone had framed him. He argued that he wouldn't have left incriminating evidence like an engagement ring and a note near the body. However, forensic examinations linked all the items found with Valerie's body to Luke T-Man. A computer forensics expert testified that Valerie's phone was last used on August 25, 2016, the day police believe she died. The detective explained how phone records help investigators track a person's location. Records showed Valerie called Luke 31 times on the day he was with his new girlfriend. Luke only answered the last call, which lasted 13 minutes. Police believe he was home by the time the call ended the next morning. During the trial, Luke's brother Sam testified against him, prompting the defense to question the phone records. Luke initially told police that Sam helped him bury Valerie's body, but Sam denied this in court. Sam had an alibi, working 2 hours away, which his work log supported. Prosecution witnesses painted a picture of the private life of Luke and Valerie. It was revealed that Luke had told police that his PTSD could trigger rages that he would later forget. Court testimony showed that Luke and Valerie regularly used multiple types of illegal substances, and that Luke had claimed he was getting divorced around the time of Valerie's disappearance. The ex-girlfriend of Sam's brother testified about seeing Luke and Valerie use various substances together, despite the image they projected of having a healthy relationship. Members of the evidence response team testified about their findings at the Tiemans home. Luke's defense team quickly objected to some items, including gardening tools found in a shed near the property and a .45 caliber handgun obtained from one of the rooms in the home. Stephen Smith, Tiemans' defense attorney, argued that the state assumed the gun and ammo were used by T-Man because they were found in the home. However, he pointed out that they never verified who the items actually belonged to, suggesting that someone else in the house may have had use to them. On the 5th day of the trial, T-Man admitted to changing his story multiple times, stating that he told investigators several different versions to protect his parents. He claimed that the detectives forced him to give false testimony and that he had no motive to take his wife's life. Furthermore, he stated that there was no DNA evidence linking him to the crime scene. Prosecutors presented a strong clue against Luke T-Man, stating that he was the only person who could have harmed Valerie and that all the evidence pointed to his guilt. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before delivering a guilty verdict on May 11, 2018. At the sentencing hearing, Valerie's mother expressed her outrage and grief, stating that Tiemans' denial of the crime was appalling and that he deserved a life sentence in prison. Tiemans' mother, on the other hand, pleaded with the court to consider her son's entire life and to balance justice with mercy. T-Man became emotional as his parents begged the judge for leniency. His mother, Laurel, explained that her son had changed after serving 3 combat tours in Afghanistan and Iraq, and that she was not using his post-traumatic stress disorder as an excuse, but rather seeking understanding. Ultimately, T-Man was sentenced to 55 years in prison, which was less than the life sentence that Valerie's parents had hoped for. T-Man appealed the decision, but it was unsuccessful. While in prison, he changed his testimony again, but this did not help his case. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Michelle Anglin. Michelle Anglin was born on November 27, 1973, in Fountain Valley, California. Later, her family moved to Arizona, where she was raised by her mother, Peggy, and stepfather, Larry McCall. Michelle had 2 older sisters, Cindy and Christina. When Michelle was around 20 years old, she started dating Hudson England, and their relationship blossomed. They made each other happy, and when Hudson proposed, Michelle accepted without hesitation. In late 1995, they got married in a joyous ceremony surrounded by their families and friends. Michelle's mother, Peggy Cohen McCall, was also a realtor. According to Michelle's mother, it was she who inspired Michelle to enter the real estate industry. Michelle's family would regularly keep in touch with her via her work phone when she was in the office. When showing houses to clients, Michelle always carried a pager, allowing her loved ones to reach her if needed. However, on February 9, 1996, Michelle did not respond to calls and messages from her family. She would usually inform someone about her plans to show a house to a potential buyer. The job of a realtor can be fraught with risk, often exceeding that of other professions. This is due in part to the nature of their work, which often involves working alone and visiting isolated locations to show properties. Predators often target realtors, luring them to empty homes with false intentions, such as feigning interest in buying a house. Once the realtor is alone and vulnerable, the predator can take advantage of the situation. Concern for this inherent danger led Michelle's family to become worried when they couldn't contact her during the day. Michelle's sister Cindy sought assistance from her boyfriend, a member of the Phoenix Police, who offered to perform a welfare check on Michelle. When he visited her workplace, he discovered Michelle's parked car, which seemed undisturbed. When Cindy's boyfriend entered the office, he found the lights on and music playing. However, a closer look revealed that Michelle's personal belongings, including her purse and pager, were still on a table in the unlocked office. This raised questions about why she had left in such a hurry, abandoning her belongings behind. That evening, Michelle's family filed a missing persons report with the police. Earlier that day, Michelle had an appointment with a potential buyer to show them 3 houses near her office. Since the houses were close to her office, she decided not to use her car. When the police arrived, they inspected Michelle's office and then visited the 3 houses she might have shown the buyer. During their initial search, they found 3 pink buttons in the master closet on the second floor of one of the houses. They also noticed that 2 candles in the master bathroom had been knocked over, one into each sink, but everything else seemed undisturbed. Cindy's boyfriend asked her about Michelle's outfit, as police found buttons they suspected belonged to her. Cindy couldn't recall. A search of the houses, especially where the buttons were found, led to a tragic discovery that Michelle's body under the master bed. Investigation revealed seminal fluid, broken candlesticks, Michelle's clothes, and paint and plaster chips under the bed and in the bathroom. The forensic examination found no evidence of forced intimate contact before Michelle's death. However, it suggested the perpetrator intended to do so, undressing Michelle despite her resistance. Bruises on her neck indicated she was strangled while fighting back. The violent confrontation occurred in the master closet and bath, as shown by scattered buttons, seminal fluid, damaged candles, and broken ceramic chips. During the attack, Michelle's clothing was torn off, as evident by her tattered and interwoven clothes. Her body showed multiple signs of the intense struggle, numerous bruises and abrasions on her body, defensive wounds on her hands and wrists. Michelle's desperate fight to defend herself against her assailant ultimately proved futile. After her daughter's death, Peggy spoke out about the safety concerns facing women who work alone, including real estate agents in model homes and open houses. As a result of her vocal advocacy, Peggy claims to have been fired from her job. The police's first lead in the investigation was Michelle's husband, Hudson England. It's standard procedure for law enforcement to initially investigate family members to determine if they were involved in the crime. Michelle's family, however, did not suspect Hudson, as they were a happy couple who had married just 4 months prior to her death. Nevertheless, the investigators decided to look into Hudson's alibi. When questioned by the police, Hudson appeared genuinely distraught over Michelle's death. He claimed to have spent the day visiting several car dealerships in search of a family vehicle, as they were planning to start a family. The police verified his alibi and found it to be true, ultimately ruling him out as a suspect. During the investigation, he stated that he had no idea who would want to harm Michelle and speculated that she was likely attacked by someone she was showing a house to. To further investigate, the police reviewed Michelle's phone records and discovered that on February 9th, between 3:45 and 4:15 p.m., she was on a call with a fellow sales agent. Michelle abruptly ended the call, stating that a potential buyer had arrived at the subdivision. The fellow agent attempted to call Michelle back between 4:30 and 5 p.m., but the calls went unanswered. This information allowed detectives to narrow down the time frame of the attack, but they still needed to identify the person Michelle was supposed to meet. Unfortunately, Michelle had not mentioned the potential buyer's name during the phone conversation, nor had she written it in her work notes, leaving the police without any immediate leads on the identity of the mysterious individual. The police investigation into the attack on Michelle involved interviewing people who lived in the area where the incident occurred. One resident, who happened to be returning home from work between 4 o'clock and 4:45 p.m. on February 9th, reported seeing a white man coming down the steps of one of the 3 houses for sale in the neighborhood. This witness also noticed a black, full-sized, older model Chevrolet pickup truck with California license plates parked in the lot of the house. Additionally, several potential buyers who visited the subdivision that day between 4 o'clock and 4:30 p.m. reported seeing a man walking from the direction of the second and third model homes. They also observed that candlesticks in the master bathroom of the third model home had been knocked over into the sinks. Kim Ramos, a young real estate sales associate from a nearby subdivision, contacted the police after hearing the news. She reported that on February 9th, the same day Michelle's body was found at around 2 p.m., she had met with a potential buyer who drove an old black Chevrolet pickup truck. Kim found it suspicious that he was interested in a $500,000 house, but drove a vehicle that suggested a more modest lifestyle. When Kim accompanied he to a 2-story house, supposedly to answer his questions, she became uneasy. He stood too close to her and casually touched her hand several times, making her wary. After spending only a brief time with him, Kim returned to the sales office, feeling that his questions about the house, such as the type of flooring and the possibility of adding a 4th bedroom, seemed unnecessary and even foolish. Ms. Ramos played a crucial role in the investigation by asking the suspicious client to fill out a guest registration card, which he reluctantly completed. The client, who claimed to be James Adams, provided his real home address and phone number. When police visited the address, they spotted a black Chevrolet pickup truck with California license plates parked outside. The truck was registered to 32-year-old James Van Adams, who was not at home at the time. Police took photos of the truck and showed them to Kim, who confirmed that it was the same vehicle driven by the suspicious client she had met just hours before Michelle's death. Further investigation into James Van Adams' background revealed that Adams was a 32-year-old man who was currently separated from his wife and had a child. He had a prior conviction in California for a crime committed in 1990. In that case, Adams had targeted Melissa Cunningham, a petite sales agent who was working alone at an apartment complex. He had asked her to show him model homes that were still under construction, specifically expressing interest in a 2-story home with a master bedroom and bathroom upstairs. This event further increased suspicions about Adams. Investigating Michelle England's death led detectives to quickly uncover a previous failed attack by James Adams. They obtained a search and arrest warrant, returned to Adams' home, and took him in for questioning. However, Adams refused to cooperate, appeared nervous, and had noticeable injuries on his face, including under his eye. The detectives suspected that these injuries might have been sustained when Michelle defended herself with the missing candlesticks, which were later found. As a result, they collected DNA, blood, and hair samples from Adams. A witness, Kim Ramos, identified him and reported that he had no visible injuries on his face during their meeting. Adams claimed his injuries came from working on his pickup truck, but work records showed he left early on February 9th and didn't return, citing car troubles. When seen next, he had a new facial injury and black eye, which his employer and coworker said weren't there before. The police analysis of Adams' DNA, blood, and hair samples is detailed in court documents, which also reference a sample of seminal fluid found on the carpet in the closet. The Phoenix Crime Lab and DPS Lab conducted DNA testing on a carpet sample. Initially, results excluded James Van Adams, but retesting by the crime lab and further testing included him as a contributor. Despite the police taking extensive fingerprint and footprint evidence from the model home, none of the prints matched Adams. Adams was charged with the murder of Michelle England and denied any involvement in the crime. His trial began on July 1, 1997. During the trial, prosecutors presented evidence that they claimed linked Adams to Michelle's death. One key witness was Kim Ramos, who believed she had narrowly escaped being attacked by Adams herself. Ramos testified that Adams had shown suspicious behavior, including wearing casual clothing, driving an old vehicle, and asking unusual questions about the house's flooring and fourth bedroom. Prosecutors also presented evidence of Adams' interactions with other sales agents in California and Briarwood, which they claimed showed a pattern of suspicious behavior. Susan Wright, an employee, met with Adams multiple times. Their first meeting was in September or October 1995, when Adams asked Wright to show him a house. Wright recalled Adams standing too close and not asking questions about the house. On November 5, 1995, James Van Adams visited Susan's office again, signing in as Jim Adams. This was not an incident, as Adams had repeatedly visited her office and called her, asking her out on dates. A pattern of behavior emerged, revealing Adams' deliberate plan of action. Adams targeted women with similar characteristics, attacking them in California in 1990. Victims Michelle, Susan Wright, Kim Ramos, and Melissa Cunningham worked alone in shared physical traits. Attacks occurred in the afternoon, with Adams often asking victims to accompany him upstairs in a two-story house. He used a similar method, putting his right arm around their necks, ripping off their clothes, and attempting to assault them. The trial was a challenging experience for Michelle's family, who were present throughout the proceedings. The judge had to invite Michelle's mother to go out from the courtroom because she was overcome with emotion and yelled at Adams. However, Adams appeared to take pleasure in the family's distress, occasionally flashing a grin. Nevertheless, his demeanor changed when the jury delivered a guilty verdict on all counts on July 14, 1997, and he was subsequently sentenced to death. Following the sentencing, Adams launched a series of appeals, claiming he was innocent. In his appeal, he argued that a previous incident in California in 1990, in which Melissa Cunningham escaped, supported his claim that he did not intentionally try to kill Michelle. Adams alleged that during the California attack, he had simply restrained his victim by the neck in an attempt to make intimate contact. He insisted that this incident demonstrated that he did not plan to kill Michelle, and the jury should have considered this when reaching their verdict. James Van Adams' attempts to appeal his death sentence were denied, and on March 14, 2005, he took his own life while in prison. An autopsy revealed that the cause of death was asphyxia, consistent with suicide. The news of his death brought relief to the family of Michelle. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Sarah Pappenheim. Sarah Pappenheim was born on January 30, 1997, in Minnesota. She was the second child of Donnie Odegaard and Jerry Pappenheim, with an older brother named Josh. The siblings developed a strong bond as they grew older. When Sarah was in second grade, her family relocated from Minneapolis to Redding, California. She graduated from Foothill High School in 2015, where she was an active member of the school band and played the drums. Sarah was passionate about music, especially drumming. She was a skilled drummer and regularly played at jam sessions in Redding. As one of the few female drummers, she stood out on stage. When Sarah was 18, she moved back to her hometown in Minnesota with her mother and brother after her parents got divorced. There, she continued to play drums at different venues and eventually met Bernard Allison, a famous blues guitarist and singer. Allison was impressed with her skills and invited her to join him on stage occasionally. By the time Sarah turned 19, she had become a local celebrity among blues fans, known for her bright smile, which earned her the nickname Ronald McDonald. Meanwhile, her brother Josh was struggling with depression and mental health issues after their parents' divorce. Tragically, on an ordinary day in February 2016, the police arrived at their doorstep and delivered devastating news to Sarah's mother. Josh took his own life at the age of 20, leaving his loved ones, especially his mother Sarah, heartbroken. The bond between Sarah and Josh was incredibly strong, and his passing devastated her. To cope with her loss and to help others who struggle with mental health, Sarah decided to study psychology. She had been in touch with Nico Carson Major, who lived in the Netherlands, and she moved there to pursue her studies. At Erasmus University in Rotterdam, Sarah began her psychology program with Nico's support, who not only helped her navigate her grief but also assisted her with her studies as a native speaker. Sarah's passion for music never faded despite her focus on studies and work. She stayed in touch with Bernard Allison, a musician she had performed with, and shared her dream of buying a drum kit. In January 2017, Bernard's band toured Europe, and on Sarah's 20th birthday, January 30th, she attended Bernard's concert in Germany with Nico. Bernard spotted her in the audience, invited her on stage, and let her play the drums with them, just like old times. Sarah lived on the third floor of an apartment complex near the university in Rotterdam. As 2018 drew to a close, she planned to spend Christmas in the United States and booked a flight for a week before New Year's Eve. However, on December 12th, her life took a devastating turn. When a police officer appeared at her doorstep, just like in 2016 when her son had passed away, Sarah's legs began to shake. She instinctively knew what the officer was about to tell her, but couldn't bear the thought of losing another loved one. When the officer informed Sarah's mother that her daughter had passed away, she was overcome with grief and lost consciousness. This devastating news came just a year after the loss of her son, who had died at the age of 20. Sarah was only 21 years old. Sarah lived in a student complex on the third floor, where she rented an apartment with her roommate, Joel Schelling. Joel was also a musician, and music was the common interest that brought them together. Unlike Sarah, who was outgoing and always smiling, Joel was more reserved and had a temper. Despite their occasional quarrels, Sarah remained a supportive friend to Joel, often calming him down when he became angry. However, the situation took a turn for the worse over time. Just 6 days before her death, Sarah confided in her friend Adam Pryor that she was afraid of Joel, who had threatened to harm 3 people he disliked. Sarah knew she had to go to the police. Just a couple of days before her death, she had spoken to her mother on the phone about her concerns. Sarah's roommate, Joel, was behaving in a way that was increasingly bothering her. Her mother advised her to find a new place to live as soon as possible and to avoid Joel until she could move out. On December 12, 2018, at 12:20 p.m., the police received a call from Sarah and Joel's next-door neighbors, who reported hearing a loud fight and then Sarah screaming. When the police arrived, they found Sarah lying on the floor with multiple stab wounds. Despite attempts to revive her, Sarah died from her injuries. The police immediately began searching for Joel, who was nowhere to be found. Neighbors reported that he had left the apartment in a hurry, taking a large double bass with him. This distinctive instrument became a key detail in the police's description of Joel. Less than 2 hours after the crime, 23-year-old Joel Schelling was arrested at Eindhoven train station, about 60 miles from Rotterdam. He was on his way to visit his parents, who lived in Eindhoven. After Joel was arrested, he made a shocking confession to his mother while on the train. He told her that he had taken Sarah's life. The judge subsequently placed Joel under arrest for 14 days to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. Meanwhile, forensic experts conducting the autopsy on Sarah's body found 27 stab wounds, with several of them on her neck, abdomen, and back. 2 days after Sarah passed away, her mother, Doni Odegaard, traveled to the Netherlands to arrange for her daughter's body to be returned home. However, this required raising $40,000, a task that was made possible by the generosity of strangers who cared for the family. Upon learning of Joel's arrest, Doni Odegaard inquired if her daughter had contacted the police. Sarah had instead reached out to social workers, who visited Joel and found him calm. However, the next day, Sarah again contacted social services due to Joel's erratic behavior, including hitting himself with a hammer and threatening to harm multiple people. The case against Schelling began in March 2019. Schelling was accused of causing Sarah Pappenheim's death and admitted his guilt. However, he claimed he did not remember the actual act of taking her life. According to Schelling, he recalled fighting with Sarah, but his next memory was of being in the shower, cleaning himself. Sarah's mother, Doni Odegaard, attended each hearing, relying on an interpreter to understand the proceedings. During the trial, Schelling stated that he suffered from delirium and heard voices in his head. However, when asked if these voices had instructed him to fight with Sarah, Schelling said he did not know and could not recall. He also could not remember the cause of their fight. Prior to the verdict, experts testified that Schelling suffered from multiple disorders and required long-term treatment. Despite this, they concluded that Schelling was responsible for Sarah's death. The verdict was announced in December 2019. Sarah Pappenheim's death occurred before she could receive a response to her second request for support, after her initial request for assistance from social workers went unresponded due to the specialist's unavailability. The medics concluded that Schelling was aware of the initial fight and scuffle with Sarah and had the opportunity to either stop the altercation or grab the knife. By choosing the latter, he should be held accountable for his actions. The prosecutor requested a 10-year prison sentence, but the judge in Rotterdam gave Schelling a 6-year prison term, followed by an indefinite sentence in a psychiatric hospital. The court reduced the sentence from 10 years due to Schelling's relatively young age and his significantly diminished mental capacity at the time of the crime. This means that the court did not consider Schelling fully responsible for his actions. When handing down the sentence, the court released a detailed explanation stating that, although the crime was severe and unpredictable, Schelling's serious psychological disorders made it likely that he would commit another violent crime. The court noted that Schelling suffers from chronic psychological disorders that require ongoing treatment in a clinical setting. The court viewed psychiatric detention as a punitive measure for Schelling, who has expressed a willingness to undergo treatment for depression and other disorders. The court has ruled that Schelling will remain in treatment until it determines he is well enough to be released. The court will review his status every 2 years. Additionally, Schelling has been ordered to pay €68,700 in compensation to Sarah's family. Doni Odegaard is outraged by the sentence, believing it is too lenient. She thinks Schelling should have received a minimum sentence of 10 years in prison. In her opinion, Schelling would have faced a much harsher sentence in the US, such as life imprisonment or the death penalty, which would have prevented him from committing a similar crime in the future. She is also concerned that Schelling may be eligible for parole in as little as 4 years and vowed to do everything in her power to keep him behind bars. An investigation was also conducted into the social workers who had interacted with Sarah. The investigation concluded that the social workers could not be held accountable for failing to identify Schelling's disorders because they did not possess the necessary expertise to make such a diagnosis. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Christina Carlin-Craft. Christina Rose Carlin-Craft was born on November 11, 1983, in southern New Jersey, to Stuart Craft and Dawn Carlin. From a young age, she enjoyed being in front of the camera, whether it was being photographed or videotaped. After graduating from high school in Linwood in 2000, Christina worked as a waitress in southern New Jersey and later at the Borgata Hotel Casino and Spa in Atlantic City. Although she had a stable job, her true aspiration was to become a model. Christina's determination eventually paid off, and she achieved some success in the modeling industry. In her promotional materials, she expressed her love for posing in elegant lingerie and swimwear. According to Eva Waltz, a friend Christina met while working on a 3-day photo shoot for Maxim magazine, Christina was a charming and beautiful person with a great sense of humor. With her dark hair and blue eyes, she embodied the qualities of a fashion model. Christina's ultimate goal was to appear on the cover of Playboy. In 2003, while still working as a waitress at the Borgata Casino, Christina met Alex Caiatelli, and they soon began dating. Alex supports Christina's ambitions and never hindered her career. They got engaged after a long relationship. During this time, Christina became Cyber Girl of the Month in May 2009, earning an invitation to the Playboy Mansion, where she attended exclusive events and experienced luxury. At the height of her career, Christina's ambitions soared, particularly after meeting Hugh Hefner. Unfortunately, despite her efforts, she failed to secure a modeling contract with Playboy magazine, a highly competitive opportunity that only one girl among thousands of applicants can attain. Christina faced significant obstacles in becoming a top model at that time. One major issue was her age. At 26, she was considered too old for certain magazines that typically feature younger models. Despite this, she continued to work hard, landing jobs with prominent companies like Redken, Maxim, Victoria's Secret, and Vanity Fair. Determined to advance her career, Christina moved to New York with her boyfriend Alex. However, her decision to pose for Playboy proved to be a setback. Many brands were hesitant to work with her after the explicit photo shoot, and her career began to decline. Eventually, it came to a complete halt. It was a challenging time for Christina, but she was grateful to have Alex's support to help her through it. Christina was a woman known for both her physical beauty and her controversial behavior. In 2016, she caused a disturbance at the Smith, a New York restaurant. Following the incident, the New York Post published several articles about what had happened. According to law enforcement sources and court documents, Christina Carlin Craft, 34, was dining at the Smith with a male friend on March 6 when an argument broke out over the bill. The man refused to pay, and the manager, Sergei Anakin, intervened. Christina, who was reportedly intoxicated, claimed the manager had pushed her, but a video of the incident showed that was not true. During the altercation, Christina allegedly hit a police officer on the neck, causing redness and significant pain. She was subsequently charged with misdemeanor assault, attempted assault, and harassment. However, after the district attorney offered her a deal, the charges were dropped on the condition that she stayed out of trouble for 6 months. Christina's lawyer explained that she accepted a reasonable deal offered by the district attorney. Christina had always been fond of Philadelphia, particularly Ardmore, where she felt a strong sense of safety. Considering this, Alex purchased an apartment for her in Ardmore, and they of them relocated to Pennsylvania in 2018. However, Christina soon discovered that Ardmore did not live up to her expectations of being a safe haven. In fact, on August 18, 2018, she reported a robbery to the police. Christina spent the evening at a bar in Philadelphia, but her memories of the night are hazy. The next morning, she woke up with no recollection of how she got home or if anyone was with her. She suspected that someone had drugged her with illegal substances. Feeling scared, she confided in others about her concerns. Her partner, Alex, was away on a business trip at the time, which added to her anxiety. The police investigation into the incident uncovered CCTV footage that showed a car arriving at Christina's apartment building around 3 a.m. The footage revealed that Christina was unconscious in the back seat. The driver, who was later identified as the perpetrator, took Christina's keys from her purse and entered her apartment. Once inside, the thief stole over $50,000 worth of valuables, including jewelry, designer handbags, sunglasses, a credit card, and personal documents. The perpetrator spent about an hour and a half in Christina's apartment before returning to the car. He then helped Christina out of the vehicle and into her apartment building, leaving her in the hallway. The thief put the keys back in Christina's purse and drove away, leaving her disoriented and frightened. The police were able to identify the perpetrator of the robbery with the help of a credit card statement. The culprit was Andre Melton, a man with a prior criminal record. At the time of the robbery, Melton was driving a rented 2018 Kia Sorento with a Virginia license plate. Witnesses reported seeing the same car near Christina's house on August 17th, a sighting confirmed by police using specialized license plate recognition software. As the police searched for Melton and worked to recover Christina's stolen belongings, a far more serious crime occurred. On August 22, 2018, Alex Cayatelli called the police to ask them to check on his girlfriend, Christina Carlin Craft, as he was unable to contact her. When he arrived home, he found the apartment door locked from the inside. A review of the security system revealed that someone had opened the front door and balcony door overnight. The police were forced to break down the front door to gain entry. Upon entering the apartment, they immediately discovered a crime scene, with a body on the bed covered in a blanket and blood visible. Christina Carlin Craft's brutally beaten body was discovered under a blanket. She had suffered severe injuries, including a broken nose and strangulation marks on her neck. When Christina's identity was confirmed, the news of her death was devastating to Alex. As the police investigated further, they couldn't rule out the possibility that Alex might be involved in her murder. After all, the closest people to the victim are often the prime suspects. Christina and Alex had a long history together, and anything could have happened between them. The fact that Alex had called the police to express his concern about Christina, only to have her body discovered shortly after, raised suspicions. It was possible that Alex had staged his concern to divert attention from himself. The detectives asked him to accompany them to the police station for questioning, and Alex agreed without hesitation. Alex told investigators he had to return to New York for urgent work on August 21st. On August 22nd, at 2:30 a.m., he called Christina to say goodnight, but she didn't answer. Since Christina was always awake at that hour, Alex grew concerned. He called her several more times, but got no response. He then checked the security system and found suspicious activity at the apartment that night. Alex decided to put his business on hold and return to Ardmore immediately. The police believed Alex's story and ruled him out as a suspect, as it was impossible for him to be in two places at once. His alibi checked out, and the police cleared him of any involvement in Christina's death. The main suspect in Christina's murder was initially Andre Melton, who had previously stolen valuables from her apartment. It's possible that he returned to the apartment to steal again, but his plan was foiled when Christina caught him. Alternatively, he may have discovered that she had reported him to the police and sought revenge. On August 22nd, the day Christina's body was discovered, the police obtained an arrest warrant for Andre Melton. When they went to his residence, they found some of Christina's belongings, but Melton was nowhere to be found. However, surveillance footage from the night of the crime revealed that Christina had returned to her apartment with an unknown man at 3:08 a.m., but it wasn't Andre Melton. Further analysis of the footage showed that the unknown man did not leave the apartment. To investigate further, police reviewed CCTV footage from the streets of Ardmore and discovered that Christina had visited a bar in Philadelphia before returning to her apartment. At the bar, investigators found footage of Christina meeting a man who later hugged her, the same man she had returned to her apartment with. Christina and a new acquaintance hailed a taxi after leaving the bar. Detectives tracked her movements to rebuild the timeline of events leading up to her death. They eliminated Melton as a suspect since he wasn't with her that day. They still had to determine if her death was connected to the earlier robbery or just a coincidence. On August 25th, the police got a new lead. Andrew Sanford, the taxi driver who drove Christina and her companion that night. He reported that Christina and her friend had approached him, and they didn't use the taxi app. After agreeing on a fare, they got into the taxi. According to Sanford, the couple seemed affectionate and friendly, so they didn't raise any suspicions. Sanford also remembered that when they arrived at their destination, Christina took the initiative to settle the fare. However, she didn't have any cash on her. She offered to leave her credit card, but Sanford refused. Then, Christina's friend offered him $100 if he would wait 10 to 15 minutes near the house while they went to the apartment. Sanford left 20 minutes later, as neither Christina nor her friend returned. Christina and the man entered their apartment around 3 a.m. At 4 a.m., Christina made a brief call to her cousin, but didn't speak a word. Her cousin, however, heard a man in the background instructing Christina not to call the police. The call ended abruptly, leaving the cousin unclear about what was happening. The police later determined the timeline of the crime using the apartment's door sensors, which recorded the exact times the doors were opened. The data showed that the first door opening occurred at 3:08 a.m. and the next at 5:10 a.m. Since the apartment was on the second floor, the investigators suspected that the perpetrator had left through the sliding glass door on the balcony, which was also detected by the security system around the same time. This explained why the surveillance cameras did not capture the moment when the man Christina met at the bar left the apartment. When the police arrived after Alex's call, they found Christina alone in the apartment. Based on this information, the police theorized that the perpetrator escaped by jumping off the balcony. The investigation's next step was to seek the public's help through the media. After releasing the surveillance camera images, the authorities asked anyone with information to come forward. The photos showed two individuals, Andre Melton and the second person who was at Christina's apartment on the night of her death. Surprisingly, Andre Melton called the police by himself, admitting to stealing from Christina but denying involvement in her murder. On August 26th, the police station received an anonymous call from a man who claimed to know one of the suspects in the recent crime. The caller revealed that he had shared a room with the suspect at a psychiatric clinic in Philadelphia. According to the caller, the suspect had previously assaulted a woman in Love Park and molesting her. The suspect became aggressive, shouting and causing a disturbance, and was eventually hospitalized for 2 hours at a cost of $70. However, he was not identified. The caller provided more chilling information. The suspect had bragged about strangling a woman and felt proud and satisfied by the act. This new information convinced investigators that the suspect was likely responsible for the murder of Christina Carlincraft. The police received another call from a Philadelphia relative of the suspect, who identified the man in the photo as Jonathan Wesley Harris, a convicted felon with a history of robbery. Harris had been released from prison on July 15th, just 5 weeks before Christina's murder. After studying the suspect's entire biography, it became clear that Andre Melton and Jonathan Harris had no prior connection and had never met. As a result, the police ruled out any link between their crimes. Additionally, the police gained access to Harris's phone messages. On August 22nd, he texted a friend that he had met an attractive woman and was going to her apartment. On August 28th, the police obtained an arrest warrant for Jonathan Harris. It was essential to apprehend him as soon as possible, as no one knew what he might do next. However, Harris had left no trail. When investigators contacted Harris's sister on August 29, 2018, she revealed that he had recently purchased a bus ticket to Pittsburgh. As it turned out, Harris was already on the bus when the conversation took place. The Ardor police were unable to act, and the officers wouldn't be able to catch up with him. The Pittsburgh police were their last hope. Timing was crucial, and the police investigating Christina's death contacted the Pittsburgh Law Enforcement Agency for assistance. They informed the task force of the bus's expected arrival time in Pittsburgh and shared a photo of Harris, helping them plan a strategic ambush. The officers blocked off all potential escape routes and were prepared to apprehend the suspect at a moment's notice. As the bus approached, one of the employees spotted Harris and allowed him to disembark calmly, reducing the likelihood of panic or chaotic behavior. About 10 minutes later, a police officer intercepted Harris. Harris gave a false name when asked to identify himself. He was arrested and taken to the police station, where detectives from Philadelphia interrogated him about his involvement in Christina's case. Harris claimed that he met Christina at a bar or nightclub, where she was alone, and he approached her. He admitted to being under the influence of both illegal substances and alcohol at the time. After chatting and having a drink, Christina invited him to her place. Once they arrived, Harris asked the taxi driver to wait, intending to return shortly. However, he ended up staying with Christina, and they drank multiple bottles of wine together. He claimed that they then engaged in an intimate relationship with mutual consent and used a prohibited substance. Afterward, Harris demanded that Christina pay him $1,200, which she refused. The situation escalated into a physical altercation when Christina allegedly hit Harris with a wine bottle. In response, Harris claimed he hit her in the face, causing her to fall to the floor. When Christina attempted to call for emergency assistance, Harris strangled her with sweatpants until she lost consciousness. Despite his account, several inconsistencies were found in his story. During the toxicology examination, experts found no prohibited substances in Christina's body, only alcohol. This contradicted the suspect's initial claim that he had only hit her once. When confronted with the results, Harris admitted to lying. Harris initially tried to convince detectives of his innocence, claiming Christina was fine when he left her apartment. However, during a subsequent interrogation, he fully confessed to his guilt. He explained that he had panicked after severely beating her, leaving her while she was still breathing, and covering her with a blanket to avoid the sight. Ultimately, Jonathan Harris confessed to taking Christina's life and attempting to escape detection by jumping off the balcony. Despite his earlier confession, Harris pleaded not guilty at the trial. Nevertheless, the investigators had gathered substantial evidence, making it impossible for Harris and his lawyer to win the case. The court was expected to sentence Jonathan Harris to 22 to 40 years in prison for the crime of third-degree life deprivation. However, the large amount of evidence presented by the prosecutors convinced the court that the crime was intentional, making life imprisonment a possibility. During the trial, a key witness testified against Harris. This witness had shared a room with Harris at a psychiatric clinic and had previously reported Harris to the police. Harris had confessed to the crime while in the clinic, telling the witness that he enjoyed the feeling of squeezing someone and watching them take their last breath. In the end, Judge William R. Carpenter sentenced Jonathan Wesley Harris to 30 years to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge handed down an additional 22 to 45-year sentence to Harris. The lengthy sentence was intended to send a message to future authorities who might consider granting him early release or pardon. In a separate case, Andre Melton was arrested in December 2018 and charged with burglarizing Carlin Craft's apartment. He was sentenced in March 2020 to 1 to 4 years in prison, followed by 3 years of consecutive probation, totaling 7 years under court supervision. Before receiving his sentence, Melton apologized to Carlin Craft's family. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Linda Sladen. Linda Patterson Sladen was born on March 8, 1950. At 16, she became pregnant with her first son, Jeff, and 3 years later, her second son, Tim. To build a stable family, she convinced her boyfriend, Frank Slayton, to marry her. Unfortunately, the marriage turned out to be disastrous. Frank's alcoholism addiction led to routine abuse of Linda and their sons. Jeff and Tim remember their father's violent behavior, which was triggered by his drinking. The abuse was so severe that Linda considered divorce, and in 1974, she finally escaped the toxic marriage. After 9 tumultuous years, Linda divorced Frank and started a new life as a single mother to her 2 teenage sons. Despite financial struggles and limited resources, she worked hard to provide for her family and be a caring presence in her sons' lives. Without a car, Jeff and Tim often walked to school or relied on others for rides. Jeff and Tim loved playing football, but they didn't have a ride to practice, so their coach, Coach Joseph, would often give them a lift to and from their home. Around the same time, Linda was preparing her home for her mother's visit. She wanted her mother to move in, hoping her presence would help tidy up the house and make it feel more welcoming. Linda's sister Judy would often visit her, and they would spend their time chatting over coffee. However, on September 4, 1981, Judy arrived at Linda's apartment around 8:30 a.m. to find something shocking. The night before, on September 3, 1981, Jeff had come home from football practice to find no food, so he went to his grandparents' place. He returned home around 9:30 p.m. to find the house empty. Later, around 11:30 p.m., Linda and her younger son Tim came home. Linda had been at a neighbor's place playing cards, and before that, she had done some household chores. Jeff saw his mom doing the dishes while Tim went to bed. Jeff apologized to his mom for their earlier argument, and they made up before Linda said goodnight to her boys. Jeff's last words to his mother were, "I love you, Mom, I'll see you tomorrow," but tragically, that would be the last conversation they would ever have. On September 4, 1981, at around 8:30 a.m., Judy visited Linda's apartment. When she knocked on Linda's bedroom door, there was no response. This was unusual, as Linda typically woke up before the boys left for school. Judy thought maybe Linda was still asleep, but as she turned to leave, she noticed something odd. The window in Linda's room was open, and the sheet that usually covered it was missing. Judy's concern grew, and she knocked on the door again. This time, she opened it and was met with a horrific sight: Linda's lifeless body on the floor, a wire clothes hanger wrapped around her neck. Linda was partially undressed, and her cupboard was wide open, but there were no signs of a struggle. Everything else in the room was in its usual place. Judy's scream alerted a nearby caretaker, who immediately called 911. Within minutes, the police, news reporters, and medical services arrived at the scene. The area was quickly cordoned off. Tim and Jeff were abruptly awakened by police officers, who then asked them to leave their home, which had become a crime scene. Jeff managed to avoid seeing his lifeless mother by passing by her room quickly, but Tim caught a glimpse of her for the last time. The 2 boys were subsequently sent to live with their grandparents while the investigation continued. Tragically, their mother, Linda, had been murdered at the age of 31. As soon as the boys had left, Sergeant Edgar Pickett of the Lakeland Police Department arrived at the crime scene to take charge of the case. He played a crucial role in the investigation and discovered vital evidence. Upon beginning his examination of the scene, Sergeant Pickett found several fingerprints in Linda's bedroom. While most belonged to the victim, one print did not match Linda's appeared. A palm print was discovered on the windowsill of Linda Slayton's bedroom, the same window that was missing a sheet, sparking an investigation into her death. An autopsy revealed multiple bruises and marks on her arms, shoulders, and neck, and her partially naked body suggested possible sexual assault. The autopsy results confirmed that Linda was brutally beaten, sexually assaulted, and then strangled to death with a metal clothes hanger from her own closet. The palm print found on the windowsill was a crucial piece of evidence, but unfortunately, forensic DNA analysis was not available at the time. As a result, the police had to explore Linda's family tree to identify potential suspects. The primary suspect was Frank Slayton, Linda's ex-husband, who had a history of aggression and abuse. In 1975, during their divorce, Linda described Frank as having an aggressive nature and being neglectful of his family. He was brought in for questioning, but an alibi checked out, placing him at home in Alabama on the night of Linda's murder. The police also had other individuals in mind. One of them was Jeff Slayton, Linda's son. The reason for this was a heated argument between Jeff and his mother that occurred before her murder. As the eldest son, Jeff had a complex relationship with his mother, having grown up in a household with an abusive father and later a single mother. Although Jeff and his mother frequently argued, they always managed to make amends. On the night of the murder, Jeff had made up with his mother before going to bed. When questioned by the police, Jeff passed 2 polygraph tests, which led to his name being cleared from the list of suspects. By September 2001, the police were struggling to find new leads in the case, nearly a year after the murder. However, things took a turn when they received information about a 24-year-old man who was reportedly involved in a similar crime, reigniting their investigation. Jimmy Ulmer was a suspect in Linda's murder case due to a previous crime where he attempted to abduct a 10-year-old girl through her bedroom window. A police check revealed that Ulmer had received an 80-year prison sentence, and his crimes bore a striking resemblance to Linda's case. Furthermore, Ulmer had been living in the same apartment complex as Linda at the time of the murder. The evidence against him made Ulmer the prime suspect, but he died during the investigation, making a DNA match impossible without exhuming his body. Fortunately, Ulmer's mother allowed the authorities to collect a DNA sample from him, but the results did not match. With Ulmer ruled out, the investigation turned to other potential suspects, but no one was ever charged. Despite looking into other leads, the case eventually went cold. The Slayton brothers, Linda's children, were now left to cope with the loss of their mother, relying solely on their grandparents, Clarence and Margaret Harris, for support. After Linda passed away, her family held a funeral and gradually returned to their normal routines. Her sons went back to school, and as time went by, they began to heal and move on from what had happened. Tim eventually started playing football again, and he found comfort in the support of his teammates and coach Joseph, who would often give him rides to and from practice. Tim put up a photo of his team in his bedroom, which became a source of motivation for him to keep moving forward and overcome his challenges. After their mother's death, the young Slayton brothers grew into men who built loving families of their own. Jeff got married and had 2 children, while Tim also started a family. As the years passed, both brothers regularly checked in with the Lakeland investigators to see if there were any updates on their mother's case. By 1998, Sergeant Edgar Pickett had left the case, and a new investigation team took over. Detective Brad Grace was assigned to the Slayton case and began reviewing the evidence. He discovered unidentified DNA from the 1981 crime scene and sent it to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement's Major Crime Lab for analysis. By 1999, the lab had successfully developed a full DNA profile of the killer. In 2001, Detective Grace reviewed the list of suspects in the Slayton case, determined to collect DNA samples from each one. He arranged a meeting with the Slayton brothers and collected their DNA samples, which were sent for further testing. However, the results revealed no match with the DNA profile of the suspected murderer. After clearing Jeff's name, Detective Grace turned his attention to Frank Slayton. Frank had since quit drinking and appeared to have overcome his aggressive tendencies, even reconnecting with his sons, Tim and Jeff. Frank agreed to submit his DNA for testing, but it did not match the DNA profile. Detective Grace attempted to find a match for the unidentified DNA profile by submitting it to the FBI's National DNA Database in 2005. Over the years, he eliminated dozens of suspects through DNA evidence, but he retired in 2015 after 17 years on the case. The case was then assigned to new detectives, Tommy Hathcock and Russell Hurley. Detective Tommy made a significant breakthrough in the investigation 3 years in, when they discovered that the Florida Department of Law Enforcement had developed a cutting-edge technology that could help identify unidentifiable DNA. She immediately sent the unidentified DNA from the Slayton case to a genetic genealogist, who uploaded it to a public genealogy website called GeneMatch. The website, run by Moore, produced a list of people who shared DNA with the killer. Moore then used birth certificates, marriage certificates, obituaries, and social media to build a genetic family tree. As she dug deeper, she created 3 branches of the family tree that led to a single individual who was likely responsible for Linda Slayton's murder. The DNA profile and family tree pointed to one person, Joseph Clinton Mills, also known as Coach Joseph. In a shocking twist, it turned out that Joseph was a familiar face to the Slayton family. His picture even hung on Tim's bedroom wall, with Joseph standing just above Tim's shoulder. Upon learning the killer's name, detectives Tommy and Russell began investigating Joseph Mills' background. They uncovered a history of crimes, including grand theft committed through forging a will. Although Joseph was never charged for this crime, the police had collected his palm and fingerprints. Significantly, a palm print matching Joseph was found on the windowsill at the crime scene by Sergeant Edgar Pickett. The family of the deceased might finally find closure in a cold case that had been open for over 40 years. To confirm their suspicions, investigators compared the palm prints taken from Linda Slayton's windowsill in 1981 to the suspect's palm print and found a match. However, they still needed to compare a recent DNA sample from the suspect to the DNA evidence from the Slayton case. To do this without alerting the suspect, detectives decided to obtain his DNA for testing without his knowledge. To gather evidence, investigators took garbage bags from Joseph Mills's house and searched them at the police station for items that could contain his DNA. While sorting through the trash, they found a piece of medical adhesive tape in one of the bags and sent it to the crime lab for testing. As they awaited the DNA results, the detectives looked into Joseph's private life. He was a 58-year-old married man with children and grandchildren who had spent most of his life in Kathleen, Florida, just 30 minutes from the crime scene. 2 weeks later, the crime lab results came in, revealing that the unknown DNA found at the scene matched the DNA on the medical adhesive tape. In December 2019, detectives arrested Joseph and brought him in for questioning. It was discovered that Joseph was only around 20 years old when he committed the crime in 1981. Police had spoken to him over the phone just a day after the murder, but Joseph had told investigators that he had dropped the victim off after football practice on the night of September 3, 1981, the evening before the murder. The police did not initially suspect Joseph, but he eventually became a person of interest. During questioning, Joseph claimed that Linda Slayton had invited him over for consensual sex. However, investigators thought this was a fabricated story. They suspected that Joseph had actually targeted Linda before the night of the murder, partly because he had frequently given her son, Tim, rides to and from football practice, and also because he had been seen lingering around the Slaytons' residence. According to Joseph's statement, on the night of September 3, 1981, after dropping Tim off at his house after football practice, Joseph returned to the Slaytons' residence when no one was home. He broke in through Linda's bedroom window and hid in her closet until she went to bed. Once she was asleep, Joseph emerged from the closet, beat, sexually assaulted, and ultimately strangled Linda using a wire hanger from her closet. Joseph Mills was found guilty of first-degree murder and sexual battery. During his sentencing, family members of the victim, Linda Slayton, confronted him and demanded to know why he committed the crime. However, Joseph failed to provide any explanation or apology, simply stating, "I am a good person." The judge sentenced Joseph to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Although the Slayton family found some comfort in knowing that Joseph will spend the rest of his life behind bars, they were still outraged that he was able to live freely for so many years while they suffered without their mother. Tim, Linda's son, was particularly shocked by the revelation. Joseph had been a role model and coach to him, and Tim had looked up to him. However, it turned out that Joseph had been playing a sinister game. He would often ask Tim about the progress of the case, pretending to show concern, while secretly trying to gather information and avoid suspicion. Joseph would ask about new leads and news, but Tim had no idea that the killer was standing right in front of him. Even today, Tim does not believe that the person he trusted most was actually his mother's killer. In fact, he says he had the killer's picture in his home for years without ever suspecting anything. Jeff, still grieving, often wonders how life would be different if Linda were still alive. Despite the traumatic experience, Tim and Jeff have remained very close. They often visit their mother's grave together, and Jeff never fails to light a candle on the anniversary of her death.